All right, recording has started, streaming has started. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to Hash Church. Season 11, episode 33. How about that for an episode? How about that for an episode? Want to make sure that I'm connected here. Give me 2 seconds because my headphones are not connected. I don't know what the hell I'm getting this message from. There we go. All right, I'm connected. Wonderful. Oh, okay. Well, let's start as always. Thanks everyone for showing up. I see the whole group of regulars in the chat, and it always puts a smile on my face. Tony Nag and Tam Up and John Maddox, Doug Tinsley and Borrowed Josh, and of course, Bingo Lombardi. Bingo Lombardi holding it down in Hash Church for the whole crew. Appreciate you, brother. Anyway, let's get to shouting out our sponsors. I want to shout out the Press Club for just being an awesome sponsor, trusted by top hash makers from around the world since 2016. The Press Club really is your one-stop shop for award-winning solventless gear. From press bags to wash bags, to presses to vessels, you'll find everything you need from wash to press. We're big fans of the Press Club and what they're doing in the community, so we're excited to have them on board as an official sponsor for Hash Church. They are made in the USA. They've got the patented pink stitch and the zero blowout guarantee. It's a small family-owned business, and they're offering free expedited shipping with $75 and over with international shipping available. Just visit them at www.thepressclub.co and use code HashChurch to take 10% off your purchase. So there we go. I'd like to, of course, also shout out another incredible sponsor, Puffco. Ignite your dabbing journey with Pubco. These guys have revolutionized the art of dabbing, bringing concentrates to the world with unmatched style and innovation. From the pocket-sized Puffco Pivot, delivering portable 3D chamber flavor, to the Peak Pro, the ultimate smart rig with Bluetooth precision and massive clouds, and the modular proxy redefining versatility with its sleek, customizable design. Puffco sets the gold standard for hash enthusiasts everywhere. Their cutting-edge tech has made dabbing approachable, flavorful, fun, and inspiring a global community of concentrate connoisseurs. We're beyond stoked to have Puffco as a proud sponsor of Hash Church, fueling our passion for sharing the love of hash with the world. You can shop the Pivot, Peak Pro, Proxy, and more at puffco.com and join the dabbing revolution. Yeah, Puffco, man. Really. Thank you, guys. Bubble bags stand out as the premier choice for water hash extraction, and it's no surprise why. We're the original innovators who set the standard for quality and performance. Crafted with durability in mind, these bags come with a lifetime warranty, ensuring you're covered for years of consistent use. The team behind Bubble Bags takes pride in their pioneering legacy, backing every product with unwavering confidence and a commitment to excellence, making them the trusted go-to for enthusiasts and professionals alike. Seeking top-tier hash extraction results, www.bubblebag.com. Throw in HashChurch10 for your code, and you will get a 10% discount. So how about that? Let's bring a couple of dudes into the room here, shall we? Looks like Caleb and Etienne are pretty gung-ho this morning, and they're showing up on time. I like that. I like that a lot. Welcome, gentlemen, to our Sunday congregation.
Morning, morning, morning.
Yes, isn't it though?
Morning.
How are we doing today?
I'm doing good. You know, another day in paradise. Just dealing with more cannabis stuff and trying to figure out what's happening here in America. Yeah, you know, how are things going up there in Canada? A lot of fires up there right now, eh?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. We got an entire month of rain in Vancouver yesterday or the day before. It was 96 centimeters, I think, that fell in rain yesterday. So we haven't gotten It started with us watching California burn. And I don't know if that was 10 years ago or when that started, but it was like, oh, whoa, Cali's burning. And it was every summer a new fire, new fires, more fires, fires, fires. And then it started happening here. And I don't know if it's been 5+ years that it started happening here. You guys lost a town. Well, like the next season, we lost a town. Lytton, the town of Lytton, which is about 4 or 5 hours from my house, burned to the ground. And I mean, the entire town, every building is gone. It's been 3 years actually since that happened. And I think they've got 6 or 7 buildings that they're now trying to rebuild out of a town, an entire town. So, yeah, I'm not sure. The water, our province just burns every year now consistently. There's fires all the time. I think there's an out of control one on Vancouver Island right now, which kind of sucks because my son is about to do the West Coast Trail, which is a northern to southern tip of Vancouver Island trail. It's about 75 kilometers long. And I think it takes about 6 or 7 days to hike that if you have a pretty decent flow. So hopefully those fires don't affect him, but apparently there's fires on Vancouver Island burning out of control, as I'm sure there is in California. I don't pretend to know what the hell's going on with the planet. Cyclical cycles of weather and temperature and moisture influxes and defluxes over the course of thousands of years. I hear lots of people screaming about global warming, but I remember being a young kid and they told us it was global cooling. So in about 40 years, they went from the world is turning into an ice cube to all the global ice caps are melting and we're destroying the planet in the opposite way that we told you were destroying the planet. So, and then these are the very people that tell you that cannabis has no medicinal benefit. So it's like it's hard to fucking believe them about anything when they're just lying bold-facedly to you in your face about something you absolutely unequivocally know is true. This is where my sort of, I don't want to say, well, maybe my distrust with the medical establishment has bubbled. Now, I always say to people, if I tore my arm off today, I would be at the hospital, the emergency crews, those people would do an incredible job. They'd put my arm back on. My arm would probably work still, which is incredible when you think about it. But for almost anything else, I just wouldn't go there. These are the same people that were like, no, you got to put like 9 masks on and get 7 boosters. So I just, yeah, I don't know what to say, but welcome. How about that? Ryan, welcome.
I trust the medical industry. My family all works in the medical industry, so I have a very different perspective. But
Well, absolutely. And everyone's different in regards to where they're coming from. Like my family, my father was a first responder. So he was kind of involved in the medical industry. Before you get to the medical industry, my dad was kind of one of those guys that would show up at the car accident, or if you fell off your house and landed on your fence, my dad's the guy that would pull up and pull you off the fence and, kind of get you ready to get to the hospital. And I've had pretty good for the most part, I've had pretty good. I've had friends die at the hospital, unfortunately, from mistakes that the hospital made, but they're human too. When I make a mistake, sometimes my 45 and my 25 get mixed. When a doctor misdiagnoses you with a disease, like my friend Joe had recently happen a couple of years ago, they just thought he had cancer. They thought he had a cancer that was really mellow. He ended up having one that wasn't mellow, and the medicine that they gave him for the one they thought he had actually increased the one he actually did have. And at 61 years old, he died in the hospital from a misdiagnosis here recently, which was a super bummer because he was super dynamic and awesome and amazing. But yeah, sometimes that's how it goes, right? There's human error in this world. And if you got a serious job like that, your human error is a little bit more serious. I've had conversations with Dr. David Allen because he's told me about holding like 18-year-old kids' hearts in his hands. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, dude, like how did you do that? Where in your being did you have the confidence to cut someone's chest out and then I can't remember the name of the tool, but it like cracks your rib cage open so you gain access to the chest. It's super gnarly.
Well,
And
they
he's just
prepare
like,
for
yeah,
that,
it's
man.
what's
That's why
that?
they prepare for that. That's why there's med school. They don't
It's
just like,
still
all right,
incredible.
kid, go out. You're gonna crack this chest. Well, yeah, it's the same way. Look, nobody does war, but we went out and prepared for war, and you do those sort of things. It's what you're trained to do. But at the same time, let's not forget. I was looking at a picture the other day of this doctor dressed as a cigarette, passing out cigarettes
Oh fuck.
in the emergency room. Okay,
I'm
that's
not a
just
doctor, but I play one on TV. Remember Marcus
that's how it
Welby?
used to be. Remember, it's called practicing medicine. Nobody's got mastered motherfucking medicine degrees. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
but they're still doing great things. Remember, they thought medical
absolutely.
marijuana was crazy until we kind of told them no, it's not. And now it's an actual nursing thing. I was at the VA the other day and got to point out to my doctor is like, yeah, it's a specialty now with the American Nursing Association. And here's the book. And
Right.
she was like, "Oh, hold on," and pulls it up on Amazon and orders it. Okay. So, they're open to change. They're open to education. It's just, yeah, my friend Richard Lee was lost recently due to, medicinal malpractice. He'd still be alive today, but, something happened, and that's just how it goes, unfortunately, sometimes. So,
You got to remember, it wasn't that long ago that there were stations along the side of the Thames River in England that had like little fires with smoke so that you could take smoke if you found someone drowning in the river and you could literally blow smoke up their ass.
that's right. They
And
had
they thought
bellows for that, correct?
exactly, and they thought that that would revive people, right? And that's where the expression to blow smoke up someone's ass comes from. So we have made, in the medical industry, have made an incredible amount of progress in the last 200 years. And we continue to make progress. I mean, even in medical research, follow this lady named Danny Beckman. She's this incredible young researcher that works in the COVID space. And some of the COVID researchers have showed this week or published this week that the virus damages the mitochondria in the heart, and that's what's leading to all these, you know, problems with people that are having heart issues after COVID. And yeah, like the power of science allows us to keep learning, and from these lessons we learn, we go on and make better medicines and better practices. So I don't want to.
Slowly but surely.
Well, yeah, progress comes slow, but we are getting there, and the tools that we have in science and medicine now are allowing us to make incredible progress. So,
Hey,
It's
I
just
was
a
wondering.
crazy history. When you look at like the medical history, it's like a lot of it comes from Nazi Germany and IG Farben, a pharmaceutical corporation that had to be disbanded by Nuremberg. And then they became Merck and Bayer and all these other pharmaceutical companies from Germany. It's like, holy fuck, they created Zyklon B to gas the Jews. The history of it is rough. The Rockefeller history of turning petrochemical
Oh, you're not gonna like
products
what
into
happened to
medicines.
Mercedes and BMW then.
No, dude, all of it is humans have the most insane history, and not just pharma by any means, but pharma is one of the very unique. You read about IG Farben, read about what that company did, read about the trials in Nuremberg when that company had to be disbanded, and then read about how it was so smart they just created four of the largest pharmaceutical companies from the disbandment of IG Farben. I read about that company quite a bit, and it was some of those amazing medical advances that you speak of, Ryan, became possible from operating on prisoners without they would take out their eyes. Joseph Mengele, you can read all about him, what he did. And then Project Paperclip, which of course people thought was a conspiracy in the beginning, but it was just smart thinking that America didn't want to let the Nazi scientists and all that invaluable information disappear, so they brought thousands of them to the US to sort of for rocket propulsion technology. They brought a lot of rocket scientists. They brought a lot of medical doctors who had done harsh, crazy experiments of like just taking people's arms off, taking people's eyes out. A lot of Western medicine's advancements came out of that timeline, which is holy fuck. Like, how do you sweep that under the rug?
What do you see about the Tuskegee experiments and what they did all throughout, the United States back in the 30s and 40s with eugenics and shit like that? We've got a fucked up history, no doubt, but fortunately yet unfortunately, all those experiments help us today, right? As shameful as it is, they used to do it on animals, but then they moved it on, definitely to humans. And then they went back to animals, and people were unhappy about hurting animals. So, now we're back to humans again. Because even when I was in college, I mean, how many of my friends, I cannot tell you, because they needed quick money, where did they go? They go to these pharmaceutical companies and they do
Yeah.
experiments. There's small pharmaceutical companies all over the United States, people, and you can literally volunteer your own body. And
Canada
I've
too.
watched multiple of my friends go and use their bodies over multiple weekends through these drug experiments, just to pay for college. You know what I'm saying? It's fucked up,
That's
you know.
wild. That's definitely wild. I mean, it's a choice. They're not fate forcing you, but I also knew a guy. He was kind of a semi-homeless guy, a little bit mentally ill, suffering from some damaged brain action, and he also was doing it all the time. And he was doing it as often as he could. I think you're only allowed to do it like 3 times a year or something. It's like a there's like a 4 month period for these things that he was doing, but he was just always on. He'd be just have this crazy rash on the side of his face. He'd be like, "What the fuck's wrong with your face?" He's like, I don't know, man. I took this new drug and it's giving me this rash. And I was just like, dude, there's got to be a better way. Like, go get a job at the gas station, bro. Like, this is not the way to make money. How you doing today, Caleb?
Doing
What
well.
medicines are you using, Caleb? Tell us.
Yeah, tell us exactly what you're using. I want to know if you're a healthy person. I'm just joking.
Just this beautiful regeneratively grown flower right now.
Exactly. He's like whitethorn rose for me and all my
Well,
illnesses.
no, I'm kind of right in between. My family also works in, like the hard sciences, and then, I
Mm,
also haven't been in a doctor's office in a while, so I very much feel both of what y'all are saying, Marcus and Ryan.
yeah. I still go to the doctor. I just don't go very often. Like when I broke my collarbone, I went to the doctor, and it was funny because they did nothing except give me nitrous oxide and tell me that it'll probably set the right way and go home. Bones are generally like that, unless you've dislocated them in weird ways or you've broken them in a really terrible way where it's, ripped into a artery or some other type of muscle or tendon. They heal like really just almost perfectly without much. It kind of got me to the point like we are truly the amazing, like doctors are amazing when they help us point us in the right direction. And there's some great healing practitioners, I'll call them. Keep in mind, I do this show with Dr. David Allen. And if there's anyone that talks shit more about the medical establishment, it's Dr. David Allen. And I think it's because he comes from the establishment. He lived it, he breathed it, he saw it, he saw the way they went after him, he saw the way they tried to destroy his life. It was fucking insane. Hopefully, he'll come on today and talk a little bit about some of the shit that he went through. But yeah, the DEA attacked Dr. Allen full fledged on the basis and to represent the medical establishment and get him out. They tried to take his house, they tried to take his job, they tried to put him in prison. I mean, holy shit. This is like such a kind man. This is a man who just saved lives. You're a heart surgeon. You're basically saving lives. You're saving people from heart attacks and gun wounds and all these different things. And they just couldn't get him out fast enough because of uh, because of his perception and his views on cannabis, which I thought was a little bit insane. But
Well, that happened to Dr. Todd McCorea, Dr. Mike Alcalay, Dr. Frank Lucido, and others in California after they passed Proposition 215. They actually held a press conference going after these doctors.
Jesus.
basically saying, how dare they do that? Because there was only, again, early on, there was only a handful of doctors brave enough to be writing recommendations for medical cannabis. A bunch of people in the medical field did not want to lose their access to their insurances, plural, and the realities that came with it. So, the government tried to strong arm the same way back in the day,
The
that
government, the
the
government being the
DEA
key
went in and
word.
threatened the actual Veterans Administration doctors,
Yeah, the
to the
government.
point where if you don't use, if you don't go with their traditional medicine, you talk against, the medicines that we have, then they will go after you with full gusto, to the point where those doctors had to sue the government and won off the case just to allow you to continue to talk to your doctor about medical cannabis, just to even talk to your doctor, just to have that private conversation. And they had to fight for that, because that's how strong they went after to shut them down and kick them out, right? They did not want them to have the influence that they would eventually have and spark the change that they would eventually spark, right? These were the geriatric folk of the established, hierarchy of medicine. And it's taken a whole lot of doctors and nurses, and some losing their jobs, to finally arrive at this reality that we have today, because all those early doctors were hounded. Some lost their license. Some were just harassed, brought before, I mean, Frank Lucido and them, they were brought before medical boards multiple times over the stingiest of little things. And it was just all these needles to really push them out, right? Just make it so uncomfortable for their reality that they were forced out of practicing medicines. And thankfully, there's brave people like Dr. David Allen and others that fought and, stood up for themselves. Otherwise, you know, Dr. Mark Scaldone, you wouldn't be able to speak what you're speaking about, right? If it hadn't been for those giants who stood up and said, fuck you, fuck no, I'm not going to put up with this, because of their Hippocratic oath, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To
Again,
do no harm.
government is the key word in that whole rant, because it's like government pressure that's putting political pressure on the medical system. It's a
But,
political
but
agenda about control and power and money. It's not about anything else.
in that instance, but like say, okay, what about the opioid epidemic and all the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people dying from these drugs? That is it the government making those drugs available, or is it these pharmaceutical companies?
That's power and money. Again, you want to blame the system, but what you're really talking about is a human trait: power, control, and money. And it influences all systems, not just the medical system.
Yeah, it's like if you look at power, the systems that it infiltrates, like veterinarian and human medicine are two of the worst. And you talk to anyone that goes to the vet and they're just like, oh God, I got to go to the vet. It's like, oh yeah, you go to the vet, the building's brand new. There's a couple of Porsches parked out front. Those will be the vets. And then you go in and they tell you that it's going to be $1,800 to put your dog down, but they'll give you a nice little paw thing where they push it into his little, and it's just like, oh my God, why is the veterinarian system so evil? They're putting my dog down, my kids are crying, we're all in the room, they're about to put the dog down, and the guy comes over, he's like, excuse me, sir. And he's holding a credit card thing. He's like, would you mind paying before we and I'm like, kids are there. I'm just like, dude, what the fuck? Where's the compassion in this experience right now? But yeah, it's you can be blind looking at it both ways. You can be blind looking at it like it's some big conspiracy and they're out to get you. You can be blind looking at it like they're there for you all the time and they're basically there to only help. I think it's more of a middle ground between the two things. I think there's incredible people in medicine. I think nurses are absolutely angelic people, and it's another thing that I'm upset about medicine is that how doctors and nurses engage and how doctors look down on nurses when I'm like, holy shit, why are you looking down on this nurse? They're literally doing 90% of the work. They're the ones that are the human aspect of this, while the doctor, kind of has to remove himself very much the way my sister and my mother would remove themselves and become almost robotic as they answered the phone at 911. Hello, what is your emergency? He's killing me. Ma'am, calm down, ma'am. And they just have to disengage from the human side My sister told me if she doesn't do it, she'd melt down. She'd lose her mind because of, the intense energies. And so she just has to like, ma'am, it's like the other person's literally being murdered on the phone while this conversation is happening, but she's got to be robotic. It's not going to serve her to become human in that moment and get all nervous and anxious and lose her mind. Hey, Dr. Allen, we were just talking about medicine.
Good morning.
Never attribute to malice what you can attribute to stupidity.
Ignorance, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Well,
There's
people forget, that these people are human, right? Remember, we said it's called practicing medicine, and people are people, right? They're dealing with their own chaos in life at the same time because it's their job, right?
Mhm.
And it's very fucking stressful, I
How many
cannot imagine
how many
dealing
lives
with
did you
all that
save,
stress
Dr.
all the
Allen?
time.
Tell us about saving some lives. Give us the other side of the story.
More than the fingers I got on my hands.
Well, there you go.
That's commendable. Well, like I said, if my heart exploded today, I would go and try and get someone like you to save my life. But on the flip side, I could just take care of myself, eat a good diet, and not have a heart attack, and then I won't need you in the first place. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the pathway that I'm taking. I'm trying to make it so my heart doesn't explode, and it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot easier to just live a terribly unhealthy life and show up at the doctor when it happens.
That actually happens. People's hearts do explode.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah.
I'll trust you on that.
And then you just got to sew it up.
Well, yeah, it's pretty involved. They usually die before you get them on a table. But there's something that's actually even more scarier than that. And that's a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm.
Jesus.
And so the aorta gets enlarged in your belly and it pooches out. And sometimes the walls get so thin it busts. And I've seen people that had these things rupture in the emergency room and take them to surgery. And what happens is they bleed into their abdomen a certain amount. And then the pressure in the abdomen gets bigger and bigger and their belly swells. And after a while, the blood doesn't have enough pressure to put it in the abdomen. And so you take the patients to the operating room and you prep and drape them and get everything ready. And you get a couple cell savers going at the same time. And you open their belly, and and you're resuscitating them all the time. And as soon as you open their belly, all that blood and pressure inside their abdomen squirt out, and the blood pressure drops to zero. And then what you got to do is you got to go in and you take this instrument or anything you can find. Actually, you can use your hand, and you collapse the aorta above where the rupture is. And all while your assistants are sucking out the blood. And then you got to put a clamp on the aorta above where the rupture is. And then you got to put clamps on the iliac arteries that go down into the legs. And then go in and open the aorta and take out all the blood clot and stuff. And sew a graft in proximal and then 2 distal grafts. It's a horrendous procedure. It makes you sweat a lot.
Jesus Christ. How many hours does that take you?
I've done several of these.
Is it like a 10-hour operation or like a
It's a 6-hour operation.
On
Jesus
average,
Christ.
it's 6 hours
So
from,
I mean, oh, sorry, Hetty, go ahead.
well, no, from slicing them open to, I guess, sealing them back up, right?
Yeah.
What
So
is the
you
average success rate of something like that?
Oh hell, I don't know. They unfortunately they rarely make it to the operating table.
Yeah, the explosion just puts them down.
Yeah, they
You
just,
were involved for a long enough time, and you're an empathetic person. Like, to me, we just need something else infused into this medical system that we have called empathy, like something a little more like, do you feel that the business aspect of it just leaned into the empathetic aspect of it? Like the hospital, obviously, like you're making the hospital money. Is the hospital more concerned with you saving lives, or is it more concerned with you making sure that you bring in a good amount of operations and cash to
well,
the
it's a
business?
business, and all businesses have the first primary goal, aside of everything, every other consideration, their first goal is to bring in bucks.
For the shareholders?
Damn everything, damn every other consideration.
See, that's the part that maybe if they somehow altered that slightly, I always thought that medicine, it's like a dangerous game to make it so profitable. You know, when that guy, what's his name, Skrelly, bought that pharmaceutical company, and I can't remember the medication that he had, but he was like, "Oh, I'm just like, why are we selling this for $26? Let's sell it for $1,800 or whatever." And he like raised the price like 600% or something. And
Right.
people were super pissed at him. And he was like, literally every company is doing this, but they were pissed at him because he wasn't Bayer or Pfizer. These people would worship the ground that Pfizer walks on, even though they're upset that Trump has felonies. They're like, it's fine that Pfizer has like 130 felonies about lying about the efficacy of their drug. They trust that company. But this smaller guy, they look at him like, oh, what a piece of shit to do that. And it's like, well, every pharma company is doing that. They're literally attaching 1,000x to the price of their drug before they sell it. Someone was telling me recently, oh, it was my friend Sean. His wife, Beata, she's a Hungarian woman that lives in my neighborhood. She's had hepatitis. I don't know if it's B or C, but she had hepatitis B or C. She ended up into this experimental thing, and they got rid of her hepatitis. Like she no longer has hepatitis. Now, this woman was living as healthy as you could live with hepatitis. She was living with an incredibly healthy diet, really taking care of herself. He told me recently she went and took these, it was 2 pills a day for 90 days. Guess what the cost of the pill was? One of them.
What pill?
It was something for hepatitis. I could find the name of the drug. It was $2,500 per pill. So it was $5,000 a day for 90 days that she had to take these pills. Now,
Right.
luckily, we're in Canada. So she didn't have to pay that money. It ended up getting paid for her. But holy Christ, what about all the people that are suffering from this liver disease? It just seemed like the most, like, there's no way that drug costs that much money to
Right.
make. And it's connected to like increasing the length of someone's life. It just seems so crazy that that could just be based on, oh, you can't afford it, well, you know, you can always die of liver cirrhosis. It's like, holy shit, seems so extreme to me. But yeah.
Well, it seems like that industry would be trying to suppress any evidence that cannabis oil can help hepatitis A, B, or C. And there's indications that cannabis oil can help in all forms of liver disease.
So are you talking about the cannabinoid or the essential amino acid oil?
Just cannabis oil.
Like the cannabinoid oil, like,
Yeah, CBD and THC.
yeah, yeah. Okay. I figured. I just know that
Yeah.
you know that this hemp seed oil has a lot of benefit in health as well, and I can only imagine what it does for your health. Here's the craziest thing: we know that hemp seed oil contains all of the essential amino acids that your body needs but can't produce. We know that tons of people are amino acid deficient, which generally makes you endocannabinoid deficient. How many people on this panel consume hemp seed or hemp seed oil daily?
Well, I wish I did.
Man, I'm telling you, in the cannabis
Yeah.
space, it's a low number. I'm
What
always
you're
surprised.
saying, Marcus, what you're saying is cannabis, even the seed, is a nutraceutical and should be in the diet of all humans and animals because it regulates your immune system.
Well, I mean, you said that more than I, but sure, that's what I'm saying, Dr.
Well, that's what Jack was talking about early on, and he was teaching us all that, it was a very nutritious seed and that it had omega-3, 6, and 9. And, whereas you would get that from different types of, usually, salmon oil, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yeah, omega
he
6s.
was very much a proponent in educating us early generation on, what the benefits of, because when I was 20 fucking something, I didn't give a shit about fucking seed oils or, what
Right.
was that? I just ate what was available. My dumb ass was eating fucking Snickers and fucking Coca-Cola thinking I
Fuck
was fine
yeah.
in college, right? Because that was
America.
living off of it, right? And then going down and eating the hot dog over at the Dairy Mart,
Fuck
because
yeah.
I was hungry. I need a little bit of protein, right? And then I was wondering, why do I
Dude.
feel like shit?
I did all of that. I did all of that. I had such a sensitive stomach too. Growing up in Winnipeg was rough for me because I just spent my earlier years. I'd eat pepperoni pizza, I'd be sick. No matter what I ate, hot dogs, I'd be sick. Hamburgers, I'd be sick. McDonald's, sick. Wendy's, sick. I just get sick every time I ate. I didn't realize that maybe for me, a different diet, and I'll never forget my partner, Martin Moravchik, one of the founders of Manitoba Harvest, being like, asking me when we were super high on mushrooms, because all I ate was meat. I just grew up on meat and potatoes. I didn't know what the word vegetarian meant. I remember that. I remember like vegetarian. What the fuck is that? It's like someone that just eats vegetables. I thought it was the most insane concept. And I remember my dad saying it at the table one day. He's eating Brussels sprouts and he's like, oh my God, I could be a vegetarian. And I'm just like 9 years old going, what's a vegetarian? Like that's how much of a meat culture I grew up in. And not it's unfortunately in a sense that I kind of learned this 30 plus years ago that meat wasn't really so good for me because it was all the lowest quality meats. Like I never ate a good piece of meat in my life. Our,
So
our family ate cheap meat.
let me ask you a question. Uh, there's this meat allergy from tick bites. You know about that, right?
I have heard of this. Yes.
Now, do you only have the stomach issues or do you have hives and itching issues?
None of that. Although funny enough, back in the day when I first started eating salmon, I would get like itchy gums. I would get like an itchiness in my mouth from salmon, which was unfortunate because it was literally one of the first meats I started eating again. And I really quite liked it. And it wasn't so bad. It would just make it itchy between like my back molars a little bit. And I just kind
Wow.
of be like, all right, that'll go away soon enough. It doesn't happen anymore. I do eat salmon fairly regularly nowadays. It's pretty much one of the only meats that I consume. But yeah, it's interesting. Everyone's got different diets. I remember being the vegetarian and then, preaching to everyone that they've got to be a vegetarian and then realizing like, you know what? Like there's so many different diets in the world. Like people need to have different diets. I've met people that like eat nothing but meat. They just eat nothing but meat and they are totally healthy looking. They're eating good meat. They're not eating like tortured flesh that's like, being tortured on its way to the slaughterhouse and adrenaline soaked flat. Like they're eating good, free range, antibiotic, steroid free, blah, 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 blah. And that obviously makes a difference. It's the same if I eat like really like Monsanto soaked glyphosate, vegetables. Like that's not going to be the healthiest version. Food is food. Get the best version of it into you that you can. I support, pretty much whatever the diet that people want to have. From my vegetarian perspective, once again, and it kind of feeds into this medical thing. Like the medical thing just got so big. There's a lot of bad that leans out of that is just hard to ignore. And when it comes to food, it's very much the same thing. Like it's a very tough thing to explore the animal business, the business of slaughtering 240 billion animals annually, 77 billion chickens. Like this is fucking madness. This is vampirism. And it's literally the lowest. It's like I see cannabis people all the time who are like, oh, I only smoke the best. It's like, really? But you eat schlop? Like you're literally eating the worst fucking food you could put in your body, but you're bragging about how clean your cannabis is? Bro, holy shit. because there's some nasty things in our food industry. The same way it seems like all these big industries that get so big, it's like obviously the food industry could probably be a little more conscious. I don't pretend to know how to feed every single person on the planet that isn't massive industrial complex farming, monocropping, and all of that. It's easy for me to sit at home on my golden throne and judge it and say that's not good for you, and not support it. But do I have a system that I can implement to replace that and feed the world's people? No, I don't. I
I, I,
don't.
I personally only eat artisan tortured meat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Artisan.
people, but the funny thing is that statement, like a ton of people are eating, you know what I mean by tortured meat, right? Like the meat is not being killed in a sort of, they build the adrenaline, and there's a woman by the name of Temple Grandin who's changed this an enormous amount. She's an autistic woman, and when she was younger, I believe she grew up on a farm, and she would go into this thing that would like hold the cows tight, and it would make her feel good. Like when this thing closed in on her, she liked the feeling, and she started looking at these cows, and she would see, wow, these cows are really upset when they're walking into the slaughter. They'd have them on this particular ramp, and the ramp was at too high of an angle, and the ramp had holes in it, so their hoofs would get. This created anxiety in the cows. As the cows got closer and closer, their anxiety grew, and when anxiety happens, you're pumping adrenaline into your flesh, and then they kill the cow, and then someone would go and eat that adrenaline soaked flesh. And so Temple Grandin came in. I think they did a documentary on her. I think Claire Danes actually played Temple Grandin, but incredible story, incredible woman, did a lot for cattle and for the end of life of cattle in a way of killing them, that doesn't necessarily create all that adrenaline prior to the killing of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Temple Grandin, check her out. She's pretty wild. And the movie that she did is really cool because, of course, you've just got all these men and they're laughing at her and they're like, what, like they can't see her vision that she's just like, look, if we just make it easier for these cows and we lower the steepness of the trail that they're walking on, and we get rid of the holes. And she just did little certain things. I think she insulated the sound of the cows that went in that were getting, the bolt to the head or whatever, because that was causing anxiety and stress in the cows, hearing the scream of the other cow and the shot of the bolt into the head. All these things, she just reduced their anxiety. And to me, I truly believe that eating flesh that hasn't been stressed to the point on pumping adrenaline into its muscles has to be better for you. It just
This is an important
absolutely.
concept.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm fucking a delusional hippie nut bar. Like that's totally on the table too.
Right.
But it's how I feel. It's how I feel.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, to
I
quote,
believe
was it Homer or was it Bart Simpson that said, "You don't win friends with salad."
I mean, fuck, dude. I'll tell you, you could win my wife's friendship with a salad. She is a salad fiend. But I feel where you're coming from. Maybe ribs is a better, maybe tearing the ribs out of some poor innocent animal and feeding those to your friend is a better way to, you know, vibe
When we
out.
when we systemize these things, these industries, we make them into these big for-profit industries.
Yeah,
We forget, it becomes about efficiency and profit and power again. It's
100%. Well,
easy.
cannabis.
Yeah, it's no different.
Yeah, and none of us like it with cannabis. There's very few people in this room that are pro. I don't mind cannabis being big. I always appreciated when Dave would say, I could grow the highest quality cannabis in a field. Like I could grow 10 acres and it could be top quality. You don't need to only grow 4 plants for top quality. So I know that that's the truth, but you're right. When you systemize, it's the systemization of, I mean, think of what medicine used to be before we got you'd have the doctor, he could come to your house and he's like he'd know the names of your kids and he'd know it was kind of like back in the day, if you grew up on an island out in British Columbia, you'd know the cop. Well, you know what the police did, the RCMP in particular? They made it so no RCMP could spend more than 2 years in any one spot. Well, prior to that, you could spend 20 years on one island and everyone would know who you are. And you'd live on the island and you wouldn't harass anyone and you'd have the best cop job ever because you just be like, I'm not giving tickets. I'm not, hey, Ben, we need you over here, Ben. Like everyone's just like, you're their buddy. And that's kind of how it was. And then they were like, now you go to the island and the RCMP guy is from like Fife Lake, Saskatchewan. And you're like, well, what are you doing here? It's like, well, they want us to move around so that we don't become too friendly with people. I'm like, what a terrible fucking system that is.
Well, I mean, that system, that organization has had some massive, massive problems that are just, I mean, they've talked about dismantling the RCMP because of some of the shit that's gone on in that organization. But it's, again, it's like when these organizations get big and it's just you lose touch. I remember being in Italy, and it's hard for North Americans to understand, but in Italy, everybody's like, no, you want to get your meat from that farm, right? Like everybody
Mm,
everybody is connected to the food production system in a way that we just
totally.
aren't here in North America.
So true.
It's a lot different when you know your farmer.
It'd be nice to get back to a little bit of it. I guess it's like these dreamy utopian visions or whatever, but I
Okay.
always think that we're smart enough. Go ahead, Etienne.
Well, all right. Speaking of your utopian thing, all right, let's talk about something that happened in cannabis this week. New York State. New York
Mhm.
State allowed for only outdoor cultivation. Okay. And that was a kind of a hem and a haw. Well, this week they decided to reverse and allow for indoor cultivation. And as we know, there's a debate over indoor versus outdoor cultivation. Of course, growers in New York State are saying, well, now this evens the playing field. Now I can build a large indoor thing. Well, there's been a debate because we've seen also large indoor, cultivation and mass production in Canada. And as we've seen, it's a lot of mid, right? It's not great cannabis. So we know there's a debate about whether, indoor better than outdoor. We've seen science that shows that there's terpene profiles found in sunlight that are not found in, indoor nature replicated situations. So, what about that debate, indoor versus outdoor, right? Let's get to something that's, cannabis related. I've grown both. I've grown amazing indoor and outdoor, right? But, we also know New York State, where it's located up on, the upper part of the United States, it's going to be challenging to grow cannabis, all the year throughout the year outdoors. So you can see
Yeah.
why, as Ryan was saying, as we've gotten to this industrialization of production now, right? We need to look at more efficient ways to produce, or in New York's case, a way to produce year round, correct?
Right. Yeah. Well, I've spoken to a couple of groups there. It seems like New York is definitely like upstate in particular has some different areas. There are a couple, I believe it was Hudson Cannabis I was speaking to that said they had a really good little area of New York, but I definitely know they suffer from like the blight. They've got that going on up there, like Michigan, and it's
Septoria.
Septoria, exactly. Basically, super problematic. And yeah, I would say the same thing. Like obviously some of my favorites. My favorite resin ever was grown by Skunkman Sam in his greenhouse, and probably not with salts, and you know extracted to perfection by him, obviously. So, and collected, the genetics collected and bred by him. So just on and on and on the story goes. That being said, I have had incredible, enjoyable resin that's been grown indoors with salts. Like I just can't not say that I have. You know what I mean? Like I've had full melt, 6-star, absolutely incredible resin that just for whatever reason expressed itself in this beautiful, incredible way. So I'm not quite I'm a little on the fence with the two different types. I've also had great resin that was grown in a large scale, like just coming back from Canara recently. I still have a little resin that I got from those guys that was grown in like a, a 12,000 light room. Like you think like how could anyone grow cannabis that was like a decent in any way under 12,000 lights? But lo and behold, they did it. In fact, I was talking to them about you the other day, Ryan. I was like, dude, we need to get Ryan up into this upstairs greenhouse that you got going on here. And like, because they're all about flavor profiles. He's like, we need to find new novel flavor profiles. I'm like, well, why don't we just hire Chimera to breed them? And he was just like, we can do that. I was like,
I'd
yeah,
I'd
yeah,
I'd
we can
spend
do
time in
that.
Montreal just to start. Dude, we got
He's
so
like,
many seeds
dude,
we need to grow.
dude, I know, dude. Trust me. The first time I went into their upstairs greenhouse, that's like, I don't know how big it is, dude, but it might be the biggest rooftop greenhouse I've ever been in my life. It doesn't seem like you're on a roof. That's just how big it is. It's got 30-foot ceilings on the roof, and it's empty right now. It's completely empty. I was just like, dude, you could fill this up with flavor profiles. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah. Well, you know where to find me.
I sure do.
I'm-
I actually do. I could drive to you right now, dude. That's something that have not been able to say for like the last. Well, when you were staying at Diana's, I knew where to find you as well. But you have been all over the fucking board, dude. Holy shit.
yeah, this whole year has been such a such a journey, man. It was I had a plan in January, and then David passed, and the
Oh,
whole thing just changed. And
wow.
I was
You went
very
above and
grateful.
beyond, brother. You
I
went
was very,
above and beyond.
I was so grateful to be able to be in a position in life where I could divert path and you know focus on David and focus on Diana for a while and
No.
just try to help. I mean, that's what life's about, right? You try to take care of the people that you care about when you're going through stuff. And I've been, I guess, in a way, I've been blessed to have the flexibility to do that because not everybody is in that position. So, but
I was happy that you could do it. It made me very happy. I was I was feeling how you were feeling, like the way you were blessed to be able to do that. I was feeling that we were all blessed that you were able to do that.
well, it hit us hard. I mean, as a community, and I was thinking about it again the other day, like how Etienne and his wife stepped up, and we everybody just dropped everything, right? And it became all about honoring our friend. And these are heavy times that we all go through in life. And for me, life isn't about the stuff; it's about the relationships with the people. And being able to stop and dedicate some time to the people, and hold hands so that we can get through difficult times is it's really a valuable thing. And it takes us off course a little bit at times. If my course is trying to grow and breed and find new stuff, this is this is not doing that. But it's all about experience, and I mean, through the process, I get to know people like Robert Carroll, who's in the chat, and all these other folks that I wasn't really connected to in the Dutch scene. And we really do have this incredible community. Like it's funny. Like everybody I know, all my friends, all my family, well, not family, close family, but like all the people that I interact with daily, they're all part of this cannabis community. And cannabis has really given me a lot, including that relationship with David. And
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. We talk about industry and systems and all this stuff, but it's like really we're all on this journey together. We're all just trying to find new and interesting things and improve the species and then improve the high, right? And that's really David's guiding principle was really like, how do we make cannabis better? Like his whole passion about learning about cannabis, learning about the science in cannabis was like he just wanted to be able to learn so that he could exploit that knowledge to make cannabis better and really get more high, right? Which is it's kind of a funny thing, but it's cannabis does give something to us.
Yeah.
Um, and it's how many industries can you really say that about? You know. So I don't know. I'm glad to be on this journey with you guys, even if you're crazy nut jobs about vaccines and medical industry and veganism and all this other stuff.
Nut bars,
The thing,
baby.
the thing that we all have in common is this one plant. kind of our unifying force, and it's a global community. It really is. How you doing, Mark Sheldon? What's new with you?
Doing good. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Can hear you
Yeah,
and
doing
see you.
doing good. Doing good. Here, can I share, Marcus? Am I gonna be
We would
allowed to
love for
share?
you to share. Mark
So
Chaldon is
it's
requesting you to allow multiple presenters. Done.
yeah, so it's always fun. It's always good when new cannabinoids or new compounds are discovered in a plant. So let me share this. This is kind of cool. So can you see my screen? Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So you see what it says? It says, don't throw away those cannabis leaves. They're packed with rare compounds. So this was a paper that came out this week in
Uh-oh.
journal.
Je- Je- uh, Jeff must have heard you going into science, Dr. Mark, because he just rolled right in right as you started
Oh,
this.
look at that. Jeff's, hey,
Hey, what's
Jeff,
up, guys?
what's going on, man?
Bubble Man,
Jeff,
how you
check
doing? What's up, Mark?
good. Check this out. Actually I got to throw
Oh,
out
the
the kind
leaves,
bill.
yeah.
Kind Bill was the one who alerted me to this, and I covered this on Friday at High at 9 News. But so this group used this two-dimensional chromatography method to identify these new compounds in cannabis. Can you see the structure here? So we've seen and we've heard about flavonoids a lot, right? So flavonoids are very common, and this moiety right here is the flavonoid. The cool thing about this is that they're actually showing, so the flavonoid portion of the molecule we're used to seeing is what's called the aglycone. Aglycone's only portion of the molecule. There's usually a carbohydrate. And so here what you see is that there's what they call a C glycoside, right? That's because it's a carbon bonded to a sugar here. So this sugar moiety makes the compound super hydrophilic. And so these are not unsimilar to the things that you're seeing in your hashish water. So, Mark, it's like when you guys do ice water hash and you see all that color that's in the water, a
Yep.
lot of that are these types of pigments. So typically there's a aglycone portion which looks like a flavonoid, so they're highly colored, but typically there's a sugar on it too. And it's a sugar that makes the compound super hydrophilic, which is the reason why they go into the water phase. So this particular compound also you'll see has a nitrogen here, which makes it an alkaloid. And that makes these compounds super rare. I mean, in most cannabis extracts, you don't find a whole lot of nitrogen containing compounds. I mean, there's the nitrogens that are in your enzymes and your synthases, right? So synthases are enzymes, which are protein molecules that are, chemical catalysts in the biochemical pathway. And so, right, so there's nitrogen in those molecules. There's obviously nitrogen in
But not
DNA.
like in most of the secondary metabolites, right? Like that's one of the interesting things about cannabis plants. They produce very few nitrogenous
Very
secondary metabolites.
few, right.
That's
In
right.
fact, that's a big
It's a
distinguishing
really interesting thing. It's very
feature
different than like
between
nicotine, right? Which has
Well, it's
nitrogens.
exactly,
different from
Tobacco
all
is
other
full of
medical plants,
nitrogenous
really.
compounds.
So
And then that
exactly.
matter that's a huge consequence for the health consequences because it's the combustion of nitrogenous compounds that makes a lot of N-oxyl radicals that are a lot of the
Right.
source of harm and of chronic
There's super
smoking
cancerous
of
nitroso
tobacco. But your
compounds.
cannabis is really poor in those compounds, and so that smoke is very different. Anyway,
Right.
sorry to
So tell
Well,
us about this. What do we know of the pharmacology of this molecule, or does it do
well,
anything good, or
no, I mean, this is a class of compounds, Ryan, called um flavo because they're flavonoids, right? But because they have the nitrogen in there, they fall into the class of alkaloids. So they call them flavoalkaloids, right? So you can imagine that they could have alkaloid type activity. I mean, think about it. Here you have a a nitrogen that's basically benzylic to an aromatic ring that's got some hydroxyls on it. Well, this starts to look like, this is a phenmethylamine, not a phenethylamine, but, you start to see those types of motifs in some of these molecules. But the cool thing about it, again, is it teaches us a few things that, well, first of all, this is in the leaf, right? So this is not in the trichome itself. And so it's interesting, Jeff, to consider, why would the plant be making these as secondary metabolites? I mean, what's the function? To me, the function, when I look at these molecules and I see that there's a phenolic piece, okay, so obviously phenols and related polyphenols are often shuttles for biological reduction. So things like NADH and
Yeah,
whatnot.
I was
So
about to
right,
say
so
they're like these are like
NADH.
antioxidants or
That's
reducing
right.
compounds in the general scheme of things. And so that's kind of
That
their
that's
yeah.
right. And actually, their biological activity is super interesting because again, they're water soluble, right? Because
Mm.
they're not they don't really have a whole lot of hydrophobic character if you look at the molecule, right? And anyway, so this method that they used here, I'm going to pull up the paper itself. Let's see, are you looking at the paper? So it should say comprehensive two-dimensional liquid chromatography.
Yep.
Right, okay. So I'm going to scroll down on this a little bit. So this is the actual paper itself, which again was just published this week. So yeah, so scientists like me get really excited because here I am, 40 years into doing chemistry in the lab, and I'm learning about a new type of chromatography called hydrophilic interaction chromatography, or what they call HILIC. And so here what they did is they did a HILIC by reverse phase chromatography. So what that does is, so HLIC is kind of like different because it's using like a hydrophilic type of interaction. Most reverse phase columns, and Jeff could speak to this too, is they're using they're using typically a reverse phase column. So let's just talk about like what that is for a second. So in an HPLC system, you have what's called a column. And what you're doing is you're forcing fluid through that column at a pretty high pressure. Okay. And what happens is that column interacts with different molecules based on their polarity.
Yeah,
And
so
so
the
with a
column is
reverse,
the column is stuffed with some kind of substance, right? Like it's
right.
actually acts like a filter.
Yeah, so what, right, Ryan. So what happens like with reverse phase columns, like most HPLC columns are what we call reverse phase. And what that is where they functionalize the silica gel particles, which are hydrophilic. So silica gel is basically just refined sand, right? They functionalize those particles, really small particles, with something called oleic acid, which is C18, which is a very abundant hydrophobic acid. And so what that does is it coats the silica particles with this hydrophobic coating. So now when you push a solution of cannabinoids through there, the more hydrophobic it is, the more it's going to stick to that column, right? So the less hydrophilic it is, the more, or the less hydrophobic or the more hydrophilic it is, it would go through faster. So this technique uses hydrophilic, not hydrophobic interactions. So it's a different class of supports, but they also do what's called LCLC, which is comprehensive two-dimensional liquid chromatography. This is really super exciting for people like me and Jeff to see this application because we learned about this shit in graduate school, and now here it is being applied to basically figure out what some of these trace components are in cannabis leaves. So this is
Yeah,
just a
I had a
beautiful.
friend I had a friend in grad school at Duke who did glycan chemistry, which was like building up molecules that are multiple sugar units. I mean, oh my God, it sucked. It was so hard. But I bet there was, it's like it's 10 years ago now, more. So like the tools have advanced a lot for
Well,
this
yeah,
because
so this is
such
like the
heavy into
cutting
these
edge
kinds
of
of
where
compounds.
analytical chemistry is in 2025. You can do a
Yeah, it's so cool.
two-dimensional chromatography separation and identify. So they're not, it's important to know here, they're not
Yeah, I used to look
quantifying.
at a molecule like that. I used to look at a molecule like that one and say, "Fuck that."
Yeah, yeah, it's incredibly
Right?
complex. It's got multiple stereo centers. If you stare at a compound like that, it'll decompose, let alone isolating it. So they've actually in this paper, they don't really talk about like what the levels are. Needless to say, they're identifying these compounds for the first time. But here, I'll stop sharing. It's just
So is
really
this a
cool. I
new is
mean,
this a new to science molecule, Mark?
yeah, so these flavoalkaloids aren't known at that position having that particular substitution. So if you here, let me share again. If you scroll down into the supporting information, see this is just really cool. What you're looking at here are two of the mass spec of two of the compounds that were isolated for the first time. And
I
what you
think we
could
just
see
see
is
your
they have
screen. We just see your
they
desktop.
I was about to say
oh
that is a
really?
really surreal interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a second. Hold on a second. We need to share the right thing because this is really cool. This is fucking science, okay? Uh, Science waits for no man. So can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are two mass spectrum of two of these kinds of molecules, and what you could see is they have a nitrogen here where this R group is, this nitrogen is here. And they either have this six-membered ring or this five-membered ring here. So this basically, makes it an alkaloid because there's nitrogen in there, and that means something because there's a certain biosynthetic pathway that alkaloids share. In this case, it's very typical to see a flavonoid with this. This is like the quercetin type structure. It's got two phenolic hydroxyl groups here. But the beautiful thing here, Jeff, is you could actually see it's a carbon nucleoside, right? So you could actually see that there's a carbon-carbon connection to the sugar moiety itself. So the sugar moiety doesn't easily fall off. In some cases, these are phenyl glycosides and these hydrolyze pretty readily. And like I said, in the colored water in your hash, you're going to have compounds like this that are leading to that purplish and, yellow and other kinds of hues that you're probably seeing in your color because these things are water soluble.
How would
So,
you extract that from the water?
how would you
It's
extract it from the water?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'd probably spend a lot of time and money doing that. I was going to try to show. So here's one
You ever rode a
that's
vat water?
Well, no,
here's
listen, this is exactly how this whole terpene thing started with Tony and Horatio because it was Kay from Trichome Technologies back in 2013 possibly or early 2014. He called me up and he was at Sasha Shulgin's place
right.
and in the lab, and he sent me a picture of Sasha holding this vial of terpenes, and he said you need to figure out how to get those compounds out of the water after
Yeah.
you make water hash. You need to figure that out. And I was just like, dude, what the fuck, man? I'm not going to figure that out. Like, I got a lot of shit going on right now. And that day I told two people, literally within an hour of one another. I told Tony, who happened to be visiting some lab in Miami, I said, look, we need to figure out this terpene thing. And then I told Horatio. Those were the two guys I told. And both of them, within a very, very short period of time, had cannabis derived terpenes. Like the first cannabis derived terpenes I had seen both came from Tony and from Horatio. And that came, that inspiration was like that picture of Sasha holding the terpenes, which I
Yeah.
just went into my history with Kay and it's like, it's not there. I can't find where he sent me that picture, but it was a really
Yeah, so
magical
Kenny
picture.
Kenny flashed those terpenes in front of me too and said, "You'll never guess what's in here." And I said, "Well, give me about 10 milligrams and I'll go run an NMR and I'll tell you exactly what's in there." And he didn't like hearing that at all.
I don't have to guess. I'm a chemist, god damn it.
Well,
We have a
you
lab for
can
that.
run, but you can't hide, you know?
That's
I mean,
it.
Kenny, yeah,
Still
We
pretty
yeah,
used
that
to
was a,
incredible.
literally say
Like
that
I
every
do get
morning in grad school. We would have coffee together and we'd talk about something. And then we'd finish the conversation with, you know what? We don't have to sit here and wonder. We have a lab. We can go find out right now. And that's what we did.
yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about chemistry, right? Because, biology studies life, astronomers study stars, geologists study rocks. We study matter, and we could push around electrons on a whiteboard and say, "Wow, let's go in the lab there and just do it, you know? Let's just take a little bit of iron, a little bit of clay, a little bit of whatever, mix it together and be the alchemist of tomorrow," right? That's what, I ended up I think through Todd, I want to say through Todd Marcus, I was introduced to Paul Daly, who was Sasha's or like his helper, his assistant for many years toward the end.
yeah.
And so yeah, I met Paul at the Shogun Lab. I didn't want to say it was right after Sasha died. Right after Sasha died. Yeah, and I met his widow, but I never met Sasha, but I saw his lab, and yeah, Paul, who I think is still doing cannabis related stuff,
Did you
is
never
out
go to
there.
the psychedelic conferences? Because that's where you can meet all these guys, dude. Like the
Yeah,
first one I
Yeah, I
ever
met
went to, I met them all. Like every Jonathan Ott, like Metzner, fucking Paul
right.
Stamets, like every one of
yeah,
them. And it was like a super much smaller community than the cannabis community. That's where I
Yeah,
first met these crazy motherfuckers who were doing intermuscular injections of ketamine and then
right.
like literally like shooting their consciousness out into the universe and flying around space and visiting planets.
Sitting in floating tanks and all that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the
Well, the
first event
guy,
I did was the 50th anniversary of LSD, and you're correct. It's a very
right?
small, tight community. I was
Super.
fortunate to have Anna and Sasha at BPG back in 2004.
Mm.
We had them both for a question and answer, and people traveled literally from around the world once it came came out that they were coming, and it was standing room only at BPG, and it was just fascinating. I mean, literally shamans from around the world showed up just to ask them questions. If you were trapped on an island, what type, what five molecules would you take with you? And yeah, it's just they were a fascinating couple. I have a print of them both, hugging and around the molecule there. They are absolutely special people, but he was so ahead of his time, and I'm very fortunate. Downstairs in the fridge, I have one of Kenny's terpene original things that he gave me like a
Ah,
decade ago. So
Awesome.
yeah, I've kept that. It's I have various other historical items like the first cannabis tin, etc., to finally donate to a museum that's worthy. And I've kept it frozen too, Mark Sheldon, so that it can, properly have been maintained. So
awesome.
yeah, make it into a museum so that it's frozen, right?
Yeah, his lab reeked. Uh, Jeff, you would love it. His lab reeked like a professor's chemical collection. Just acrid, just indole smelling. You could tell that there was like acid chlorides in there and just all kinds of just crusty compounds. Just it's amazing. There's a really cool, I think I've talked about this on Hash Church, a really cool video on YouTube called Dirty Pictures. And it's not those kinds of
Oh
dirty
yeah.
pictures. Dirty Pictures refers to the little labels that Shulgin would put on his flasks and vials and whatnot. But I
That
know
lab
that,
was like books came out of that lab, dude. Like Pical and Tikal.
yeah,
You
Pical
know,
and
like
Tikal came out of there,
it's
and I know
incredible.
for a long time they were seeking money. So after his wife died, and they were trying to keep the the foundation was trying to keep the lab open, and I think that they were successful in doing that. Like they raised enough money to keep the lab and keep the property. And I think you could look it up on Google Maps, something like Shulgin Ranch or Shulgin Farm, or I forget what it is, but yeah, you find it's up in the hills above Oakland. And yeah, I mean, just really fascinating place when you go there, right? He had a Schedule One license there for years, and they knew what he was up to, but they never, you
Just
know,
making 2CB and every other
all of it,
molecule.
man,
Just like, here, check this out. This
all of
one's
it.
pretty fun.
Yeah,
Good
you know,
on
if
you.
you read those two books, if you
I
read
did. I have them
Pical and
both signed
Tika,
on my shelf.
I
if
do
you
too.
read them, Marcus, just like the works of Meshulam, if you read Meshulam's papers, you'll understand how the man thinks, you know, and yeah, so he was the ultimate psychonaut, right? And obviously, just the experiences that he had in trying the materials that he was making, he could really give a really, good assessment on the different nuances between the structural modifications that he made. Fascinating
Totally.
shit.
You know,
Well,
one of
I
one
The
of the
gotta,
ultimate
things
structure function study, you know?
yeah,
one of the
the
things that stood
bioassay.
out from the talk, what they had when somebody asked what were the five compounds they would take. THC was not one of them. I remember
Yeah.
they talked to psilocybin, but then they both looked at each other out of nowhere and both had this just sheer joy of grin. And they said 2CE, the teacher. And they looked at each other with such a reverence. It was like a spark that went throughout the room. We're like, whoa, they hold that particular compound extremely sacred to themselves, where they both looked at each other with an endearing, they said like the most sacred thing in the world, and it rung out. It was absolutely one of those, huh? Because I've done 2CB, but I've never done 2CE.
Well, you know what kind of grin that was, Etienne? That was the Shull grin.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a dad. That's a dad pun. You're allowed one. You're done.
That's it? Damn.
It's a daily thing. You only get one a day.
I thought it was pretty good, man. Come on.
No, that was pretty fucking good.
I'm a dad. It's true.
That
I'll take that.
oh that was a strong shot right there. That
Hey,
was a
it's
ghost
early,
shot.
man. It's early. I stayed up late last night. I'm not going to lie. I ate a fairly large dose of edibles as well. So I woke up today at 6 a.m. and I just closed my eyes for a second. When I looked back again, it was 8:50. And I was like, oh, holy shit. This is like, I got like 10 minutes to like, after 11 years, I'm less worried. I used to be very worried. I used to be very anal and I put all this like anxietous energy into making sure that, even today, I was supposed to fly to Montreal. Air Canada went on strike, so I didn't go, but I would have probably right now been on my phone uh in an Uber, like on my way to the airport, running Hash Church from my phone, which would be probably the seventh or eighth time that I've done that. Um, but yeah, the show must go on. It must go on. What
Well, that tracks. I'm early in my arc, and I'm just getting over the jitters.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because for a while I thought, I don't know, I just thought
You've
like
been
my
doing this like 10 years,
perspective, 11 years, yeah.
11 years. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, at this point, it's all just old hat for you, you know. Yeah.
Well, it's not that it's old hat, it's like I
Yeah,
don't
but I mean,
care.
it would
I
be
just
like
don't
the seventh or
care.
eighth time you did it from a car,
I
right? Like,
care. Yeah,
Marcus,
exactly.
it's like there isn't
Dude,
much
I've
that's
done it
new.
from a plane. Like,
Yeah.
I have a great topic of discussion for the panel.
Well, this is wonderful. I was going to ask you about that great discussion point that you
Okay, and I
have.
think we probably should do this on Cannabis Journal Club. But since we have two professors here, I would like you guys to comment on this subject. And I got into a heated discussion, almost an argument with somebody, because I said that I don't believe there are cannabis drug interactions. And the guy told me, well, I don't want you to look stupid because there's tons of cannabis drug interactions. So I would like to discuss this with the professors and see what your opinion is. My opinion is simple. The CB1 and CB2 receptors only accept things that bind to them like a lock and key, and no pharmaceutical, except for synthetic cannabinoids, fit that mission. And so therefore, cannabis cannot have drug interactions through the CB1 receptor. And there's tons of information on drug-drug interactions, and they all are based on the fact that there's two enzyme systems that degrade cannabinoids, one in the brain and one in the liver. And the liver enzymes also degrade a litany of pharmaceutical medicines. And most of these accusations have the word presumed interaction with cannabis, because since cannabis is degraded by the liver enzymes, there's a potential, I hate that word too, that the cannabis interactions may have some issue with other drugs not being degraded in the proper fashion because of the cannabis interaction with these liver enzymes. And I think it's potential, but I don't think there's any double-blind medical studies that prove cannabis changes how coumadin interacts with the human, or theophylline or anything else. And these are, I mean, the study about coumadin was done years ago, and I don't have the literature on that anymore. But as I recall, it was not a proven link. And so what are you guys' opinion about this? Are there actually drug interactions with cannabis and pharmaceuticals?
And how do you even recognize that when the cannabis has the one side effect, which is like get high, and then the drugs have like 14 pages of like anal bleeding, fucking like just like the most psychotic like side effects ever, and then you're like, oh, this drug, so and so had a whatever. It's like, oh, it was the cannabis. It had to be that's a cannabis interaction. Like it has to be. It's like really like. But there are 14 pages of side effects without cannabis being involved. Do you think that this one time with cannabis, that the side effect is now cannabis' fault? I like the way you think, Dr. Allen. Just going out on a limb. I'd love to hear from Jeff or Dr. Mark or Etienne, who was also technically a professor in Oaksterdam.
They're more
do you have any
professional.
And do you have any thoughts that you want to share, Mark? I have a couple of ideas, but
Well, yeah, I mean, just the endocannabinoid system, which is what cannabis, the phytocannabinoids in cannabis act on, does help control homeostasis. And when you take a drug, when you take an active ingredient of an FDA-approved pharmaceutical, there is going to be by definition, some interaction. I mean, you can't think. It's kind of naive to think that there wouldn't be an interaction. There's going to be some kind of interaction, whether if it's a manifestation of some kind of symptom,
Yeah, but there's
I don't know.
potential, but I'm looking for proof.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
what I would say, I mean, right away, I mean, just so like the endocannabinoid system again, it's so individual. I mean, that's the thing about the endocannabinoid system, right? Is that is that everyone has their own endocannabinoid tone, if you will, right? Like people, you could look at, again, certain disease states, whether it's a behavioral disorder or some type of neurological disorder, is an endocannabinoid deficiency that then you're using cannabis to kind of get to where, you know, you're maintaining that homeostasis relationship, which again, which I would assume, again, if you need cannabis to get there, then cannabis will be affecting the way that your body interacts with a drug. It almost seems like it would be obvious. Now, whether it interacts to give a negative side effect like
Right.
heart palpitations or, I don't know, makes you dozy or it's so difficult to say, right? It's
Yeah.
so different. There's a lot to unwrap in thinking about how any two things that you take into your body interact with each other,
Right.
let alone a pharmaceutical and something like cannabis.
Well,
Yeah.
Mark, I was
what
able
it,
to find that cannabis does react with theophylline. Smoking cannabis does react with theophylline, but I was also found out that smoking tobacco has the same effect on theophylline.
Hmm.
So my opinion is the drug war is based on baseless accusations. You just have to make, oh, there's a potential, and then all they got to do is say potential, and then they don't have to do the study.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts about that. I agree with you that some associations could have potentially been influenced by bias. And I do think that you have to look at the research carefully because I do believe that the medical community, on average, is still remains a little bit conservative and a little bit skeptical on the subject of cannabis. So,
Yeah.
it's getting more open-minded all the time, but they still, it's still a pretty conservative and careful community. And collecting the kind of evidence about cannabis that you would about other drugs has been difficult in that environment. So, it is like this is like I find with all kinds of cannabis research, it's like, it's kind of like it's just not like other fields of research. The literature is more sparse and spotty. So yeah, you always have to be a little bit careful. But I think if you say cannabis, well, cannabis is like kind of a cocktail of compounds. If I say cannabinoid, then I get to some more specific things. I cannot recall the details, but I know that several drug interactions between CBD and some commercial drugs have been discovered. And so they instruct doctors to check with patients about CBD because it can change their dosing. I know that for myself, consuming cannabis,
Well, that's the issue that I'm
presumably
speaking of.
by yeah, presumably by taxing the oxidative system or like my cytochromes and the like, it changes how alcohol interacts with my body. So it definitely there's definitely cannabis alcohol interaction that is real. And cannabinoids don't only interact with cannabinoid receptors, they also interact with some of the inflammatory chains, and that's why cannabis is an analgesic. So they change how our inflammatory pathways work, and so they can have interactions, I know, with like pain medications in some cases. But a lot of those interactions are potential, they can be dangerous if you're not aware of them, but they can also be exploited synergistically. So I think like the pharmacology is really complicated, right? And I think that's some of the reasons why cannabis has been effective in treating addiction because it secondarily medicates pain. Um, so yeah, those are some thoughts about that's basically told like shotgunned you everything I know or I've heard in the last 2 years and read. So
Well,
I think it's a complicated subject.
It's a very complicated subject. Dr. Allen, I can speak to it just as a provider at Berkeley Patients Group. Back in '09, we had a reason to start a contraindications form. We had a city council member's wife ate too much of an edible and had to go get, to the ER. And then it turns out she had a contraindication with one of her medications. I think that was a blood pressure medication. One that we had that was serious is somebody had a heart medication, and that was also in '09 or '10, that seemed to have a contraindication with a THC CBD blend. But that
I'm
was, again,
shocked.
that out of the 26 years we've been doing this, I can count on my hand less than 4 times that contraindications form has been filled out. So again, as you were stating, it's an anomaly. If anything, it's a proposed idea that it could have been. There was no science behind it. But there's also something I want to speak to that Kayla talked about, which is speaking about anesthesia. And as somebody who did not tell my anesthesiologist that I was a high cannabis user, I woke up during a procedure and I was in the midst of a full-on colonoscope where I was fully inflated, and I woke up screaming in absolute pain. And I would come to find out that there's studies that show that you need to have your anesthesia adjusted if you're a high cannabis user. So what I'm making
For
you
what
aware
reason?
of, I don't know what I was on, but whatever they knocked me out on, ever since then, I have told anesthesiologists from dentists, etc. onward that I am a high cannabis user, that I have a tolerance like a bull, and they adjust their anesthesia accordingly because
So
apparently, if you're a high
stoners are
cannabis,
resistant to anesthesia. Yeah.
what happens,
We're
Jeff?
I
stoners
believe
are
that's
resistant
medical
to sedation.
misinformation
Well, I'll say
because,
I can tell you I'm the opposite. I'm so sensitive to anesthesia that I usually come out of it and throw up for
yeah,
hours after I've had it. And I am also a very high cannabis user. I never tell them that, and it's not like I get operations all the time, but the few
yeah.
times that I have been like deathly ill afterwards. It's the same way if I take like a Tylenol 3 or whatever, I
Yeah.
get the same feeling, like just like motion sickness and heavy sickness. So you think we're spreading disinformation, Dr. Allen? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I
Calling us
believe
fucking
that
liars? I'm
no,
just
I believe that
joking.
the anesthesiologists don't know anything about cannabis, and all they do is they read what's in the literature. And if you look at Google, there's pages and pages of interaction with no double-blind studies that prove interaction. And of course, if you smoke pot and drink alcohol, there's going to be an additional effect. But that doesn't mean that if you're taking digoxin, that you have to adjust your dose of digoxin because you also smoke, or fentanyl when you get under anesthesia, because it's completely different. Fentanyl doesn't bind to anything involved in the cannabis system. And so I think there's so much propaganda, and it's drug war propaganda. And since doctors don't have Schedule 1 medical license, they only have Schedule 2 through 5, so they can't study cannabis. And if they touch cannabis, they lose their license to prescribe all medicines, which means their career is over. So no doctor studies this, and uh, and you can't get a cohort of people together and say, well, is theophylline affected when you use cannabis on this group of people? It's impossible to do a study like that or any other medicine that you'd want to name. So I don't believe there's real clinical studies. And I think I'm the only doctor that will say this, that I believe there's no harmful interactions between cannabis and any pharmaceutical. So that's my story, and I'm
Bold,
sticking to it.
bold statements, Dr.
Well,
Allen.
we do know that CBD interacts with CYP3A4 and at least one of the other cytochrome enzymes in
Yeah.
your liver.
Yeah, can I
So
share a screen again?
Yeah, because I think
Cytochrome
I think the
P450, yes, of
biochemical
course.
biochemical systems interact with each other way more, and it's such a complicated web. I mean, God,
Yeah.
yeah, like the
So
idea of things
so we
being
could
totally
design a
isolated,
study
especially from the
ourselves.
cannabinoid system, which
We
is
could
pretty.
design a study ourselves. Anybody can do this, but nobody will do it because they can't get the funding for it. So you could say, is any pharmaceutical, you could pick a number of 50 or more that are metabolized by cytochrome P450 and give them a standard dose of cannabis and see if there's any change in the drug. None of these studies have been done, and all the information on the internet is probable or presumable or
Potentially.
potential. So there is a potential, I have to admit that, but no proof that cannabis causes a negative drug interaction that I am aware of currently. And hopefully one of you guys can lead me to some real science that says that they had a cohort of people, they had them on a certain drug, and they tested the drug effect after using cannabis and found out that it had a detrimental effect.
All right. Well, here's the one study that I know of. This came out a couple of years ago, and what this was a woman who was on a NSAID called meloxicam, which is a pretty widely used medicine. And they documented that this 56-year-old woman presented with acute onset of diffuse blistering macro papular rash over 30% of her body. And then the biopsy confirmed this thing called SJS10, which is the Stevens-Johnson syndrome toxic epidural necrolysis. So yeah, I mean, I hope everyone's got something in their stomach because these pictures are pretty spectacular. But what she ended up taking was I think a liposomal CBD formulation that affected the way meloxicam was metabolized in her liver, which led to this SGS SJS thing. And if you look at these are the post-mortem pictures here, you can see they're pretty spectacular. Terrible, right? So in this case, they're not saying that it was the CBD that killed her, but it was the CBD, the way that CBD interacted with this drug meloxicam that led to this Stevens-Johnson syndrome outbreak, which
Yeah.
ultimately killed her. So I don't know. You want to say that, you can't die from just taking CBD alone, but you could die from taking CBD plus
All
this
right. Now,
FDA
all right.
approved
So
drug.
the first question I would have for this story would be, does meloxicam ever cause Stevens-Johnson syndrome? It's a very severe allergic reaction and can easily kill you. So,
Yeah, here, Dave, I'm going to put that link in the chat so you can
so
see that.
they would have to prove that two or more people on meloxicam had this reaction, and that it never happens when you just take the meloxicam.
Right.
You want to expose someone to that possibility? Holy shit! What a study to do. Whew.
All they
Don't
have to
know of
do is
any
have two
IRB that
people that
approved
have
that.
this reaction.
Or more importantly, that they can prove that the reaction never happens with the drug without cannabis present. That's a pretty big one.
Exactly.
I mean, holy
Yeah, I
shit.
guess what they say here is that the mortality rates from SJS is between 10 to 50%. Thus, prompt identification and
Yeah.
discontinuation of a causative agent is
Yeah.
vital. There have
You
been
can get
cases
that from
reported.
antifungals.
Well,
I
they have
took some
any?
antifungals and had that myself on my hands, the skin on my hands.
When they didn't
peeled
any
off.
information about her dosing there, it sounds like she ate a whole lot of CBD.
Yeah, she did. She did. She ate a whole lot
And
of
she
CBD.
and it was some kind of a really bioavailable
Yeah, it was a
compounding
Jeff, it
of
was a
it.
liposomal CBD spray.
Wow.
So maybe it's
But
something
she was
having
like,
to do
Well,
with
we're in the
liposomal.
infancy of this science, and this may be I may be proven wrong. And if that happens, good.
but it's a big
I hope
rush.
to be proven wrong. And they have real science that says that it does affect this particular medicine or that particular medicine.
Yeah.
Well, it is fascinating how easily cannabis can be. I mean, we had the conversation about the mold spores
Right,
in the
last week,
cannabis,
right.
and then it's like, well, how do we know that those spores didn't come?
Blame
No,
it on
it
the
was in the
cannabis.
cannabis. It was in her lungs. It was in the
Each
cannabis.
one of these individually with a lot of skepticism. I do agree completely. That's actually why that was why I came back this week. That discussion was so good.
Yeah. I mean, you were saying earlier about to Dr. Allen, like, oh, who would want to do that study? When I met Peter
But when
Caldini,
that's a possibility, man.
who was the I believe he was the CEO for Pfizer Canada or Pfizer America. His name was Peter Caldini. He was part of this big SPAC that I was meeting with from New York City, and they were going to get involved in cannabis. But he told me that with drugs, there is like, it's like with seatbelts in cars. He's like, there's a certain allowable amount of human loss, of human life lost. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it's like the same thing with the seatbelts. Like there was a certain amount that the car companies could allow people to die in cars. And once they went beyond that threshold and too many people were dying, they were like, we got to create a safety mechanism. And they created seatbelts and made them mandatory in all the cars. But he's telling me that drug companies have this same perspective of there's a certain amount of like trauma from side effects and or death that is acceptable. And then once that threshold is, and that's what someone earlier said, oh, it was from an FDA approved drug. I'm like, well, aren't those the drugs that kill the most people, the FDA approved ones? Like, holy shit, what a crazy thing to say. Like an FDA approved drug makes me even more nervous about
It
its
doesn't make it
efficacy and
safe, does it?
safety. It definitely does not make it safe. Like, holy shit. But we are trained in our minds to think that they're the word of God when it comes to efficacy and safety of medicine because they have been put in the position of monitoring
Authority.
you know, that they are the authority on that. So it's
Well, but
and I'm not saying they don't get
is
things right, but they're
there
frightening.
is acceptable. I mean, there is acceptable risk in life, you know.
Well, exactly. You drive a
Yeah.
car, you got to
Risk
know what's
benefit.
and it's
possible.
there every day, no matter what we do, with everything we interact with.
Right.
So you know,
100%.
like
And we die everywhere we go. So what are we going to do? Just make everything
and
illegal?
everybody dies sometime, and you know, I think like the yeah these I would far from advocate that these risk management systems are perfect. I mean, I devoted my life to a nonprofit to improve our risk management process, right? Like that's basically what I do, right? But uh you know, but each of these is a system that does you know something, and like the FDA is far from perfect, but definitely also has done a lot. And when you look at how many people live to 80 now versus say 100 120 years ago, it's pretty impressive. So
Well, we should look at the quality of life because we
I
can't
agree
say
with
that
you that there's a lot more to
America
do.
has to be one of the unhealthiest countries on the planet right now with obesity.
But,
Oh, I spoke to
it's
this
pretty
about
hard
to
for
doc.
people to kick the bucket here.
It is,
They
but
go an
it's
awful
like
long time with shockingly, you
I
know.
think it's about quality of life, not keeping people
Oh, I
alive in
agree with you.
hospital beds and incubator tubes. Like it's,
All
you know,
right,
like look
but
at Japan
that's
and
not
how
the
many
only
people
place, you
they have
know.
over 100 years old.
I mean,
And look, you know,
you know,
like there's
the FDA has brought us to vaccinations and antibiotics that prevent so many horrible childhood illnesses, disfigurements, and deaths. That's the big change in the life expectancy, is that not so many children die anymore. So
But
I
yet
think
then
that's
we
actually,
put, but then we
and that's
put
an
soda
awfully
pops
great
in the
quality of life
schools and
improvement.
half the kids are
It is true
overweight.
that
Like
it
that's
is
insane.
true that, well, that's not all the same things causing it. And also there's also always unintended consequences, right? I mean, you've made some things like safer. You've made lots of life really a lot safer, mostly.
Mhm.
Um,
Like how did like Oxycontin get accepted by the
that's
FDA?
so
Payola.
Yeah, like there's just like you can't
yeah, well,
deny
they
the
definitely didn't look.
corruption.
They didn't look skeptically at the evidence that people could use it on as not
I
as
think they
intended.
were too busy looking at the briefcases full of money. They just couldn't see past that. That's a tough
Yeah,
thing to see past, man. I'm telling you.
True.
Those briefcases must have been thick and big.
well,
Probably came in trucks. Beep, beep, beep. That's the sound of a bribe that I can get behind.
yeah.
Holy shit.
I don't think it was really straight up bribing. I think that I think it's.
No, I would just call it corruption. There's probably shares
I don't think
involved.
it was straight up corruption either. I think it's worth looking at because it was actually like a set of like a
Well,
series of failures or a series of mistakes that you could see in retrospect how it happened, and if you study it, then you can figure out how to prevent it from happening again.
oh, they have
So that's
documentaries on
kind
the
of like,
Sackler family. Corruption was
yeah, no,
absolutely
and
involved,
yeah,
like
yeah, but
at the 1,000% level. They were
systems to
paying off
prevent that.
doctors. They
Yeah,
were
so
paying them off
systems to prevent
huge.
that failed, and systems
Yes.
of marketing were allowed and permitted that shouldn't have been. That, yeah, just
Yes.
turned into that.
You're
So
talking
like,
about thalidomide, aren't you?
Well, that's a
uh,
totally different one, but that's safe.
and
Don't worry, your
that's an
baby
old,
will be
yeah, that's
fine.
a, and that one's neat too. That one has
That
neat
one's
chemistry.
it's true because if you're going to talk about like the amazing benefit of keeping the children alive, you should probably mention when you accidentally, had the children growing tails and being born without arms and
Yeah,
feet.
but actually,
It's
like
a
the overall direction has been that ever since we came up with public health approaches to looking at the world, that we've made the world like safer. And
I think you're
actually,
right. I think one of the
no,
smartest things we ever did was get sewage out of our streets. I think this was a
yeah, but
massive,
yeah,
like getting,
we never get everything perfect. And
no,
there's
we're,
always mistakes and unintended consequences along the way. And some of them are really horrible. So like, it's like,
which is the
it requires
fear
constant attention, the whole
which
world,
is the fear of blindly believing anything
Right.
too
Yeah,
fervently,
that's why I
right?
kick the
It's
tires so much on each of these things, right? I ask
yeah,
these same questions.
absolutely.
That's why I like the discussion with David here. Dr.
Yeah,
Allen.
absolutely. Yeah, Dr. Allen's always interesting. He's always poking the bear, I like it. I like his perspective. I like to sit on the fence. I know that there's good and bad in all. But I recognize the bad, for me, I got turned, I had no idea once again, because my diet was like meat and potatoes when I grew up in Manitoba. And my partner was like, hey, my wife's pregnant. I'm going to have a baby soon. Do you want to come to this meeting with me? And I'm like, what's it about? And he's like, it's about like vaccines. This was in like the early 90s. I'm like, vaccines? Like, what about vaccines? He's like, well, we just want to figure out if we should take them or not. And I remember being like, whoa, what are you talking about, dude? Of course you have to take them. What are you talking about? He's like, well, I just want to go to this meeting. It's a bunch of local people. I thought it was going to be all like super hippied out people. It wasn't. It was all moms. And they certainly weren't like conspiracy types. We were definitely the two standouts in the room. And this was like 35 years ago before his first son, Gaia, was born. And I went to this meeting, and what I found, first of all, was that none of the women were against vaccines. Not a single person in the room was against vaccines. They were very specifically against the manipulation of the statistic of their particular child who was injured by a vaccine, where the doctor and the company would absolutely not bend the knee and acknowledge that potentially, possibly, maybe it could possibly be this. So on the flip side, where you have like, oh, something happened and cannabis was involved, the medical establishment will look at that and say it was cannabis's fault. But on the other flip side, when a vaccine, and the one story that got me was the woman, she gave the first, whatever, the 3-month vaccine to her baby, and it got like half paralyzed. And the doctor was like, it definitely had nothing to do with the vaccine. She was like, no problem. She went home. She's like, moving his legs and his arms. And within about a month and a half, she brought the baby back. He was back in normal growth and movement. And so she went back and got the next vaccine, which was at like 6 or 9 months or something. And then it was even worsely paralyzed. And she was like, look, you don't think it could be the vaccine? He just got vaccinated like 4 hours ago. And the doctor's like, no, this is not the vaccine. And they just wouldn't write it into the book that it could have possibly been these vaccines. And this woman was the most intense story. They all had stories similar, but her child ended up dying on the 3rd vaccine. And she still didn't blame vaccines. She didn't want to make it so people couldn't have vaccines. She wasn't against vaccines. Yeah. She was against the idea that they wouldn't fucking write it down when clearly her baby died from a vaccine. Exactly. And that shit was fucking scary. To sit in a room with super straight people that were clearly not nut bar conspiracy freaks, but just regular people, and every one of them was saying the same thing. She was the only one that had lost a child. The others, their children weren't the same anymore. They had shifted, and these moms were tuned into their kids. They were like, I'm telling you, my kid has never been the same since this. The fact that they weren't against the vaccines to Martin and I were mind-blowing. All they wanted to do was make sure the statistics showed that this was happening and that it was a possibility, and that maybe that would create a pathway where we did more safety protocols and tested more things. They weren't like saying we shouldn't vaccinate children, right? Marcus, but yes.
I have a comment about the vaccines that most people don't understand. And vaccines are just proteins, purified proteins in a vial.
Right.
And bacteria eat protein. Okay. So when they put it in a vial and put it on the shelf, they got to make sure that it stays sterile on the shelf for a long period of time until they can use it. And so they have to put stuff in the vaccines to inhibit bacterial growth, mercury and other things. So the lawyers make them put stuff in there that obviously is not vaccine. It's mercury, thiazole, and so this causes major trouble with vaccines because it's a purified protein product, and bacteria eat that.
Right. Well, anyway, it was eye-opening for me. I started just talking about it with people, and they were like, oh, you're they didn't have the term anti-vax at the time, but I immediately noticed that to have this conversation with anyone, and dude, a week prior, I just thought, of course you get vaccines. Who the fuck is questioning vaccines? And I just never even thought of it. When I then I met these moms, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was just like, it just kind of reminded me of like the military system. It's like, oh, the pride and the patriotism. And it's just like, just almost too much in your face how patriotic it is. And then, when they come back broken and destroyed and mentally ill and suffering and suicidal, let's make sure we treat them like real shit. Let's make sure we fucking run these motherfuckers through the grinder, make sure they get homeless, make sure we facilitate the suicides for them. You just look at that and think, fuck, man, like there's definitely something wrong in this world. And I'm not saying that, like, yes, I also have judgments on the US military. It scares the shit out of me. At the same time, do I think we need police? Yes, of course we do. If we need police, then we need a military. I'm not going to deny. I'm not living in some make-believe world where, I wouldn't believe that if North America had no military whatsoever, and if America wasn't who America was, we could be speaking a whole host of different languages in this continent right now. So I'm always on the fence with these things. It's like I see the patriotism of military, but then I see the suffering of the veterans through the lens that Etienne has shown me. And it's just like, holy fuck, like this is not adding up. And it's the same thing with like, okay, these doctors, they just want to care for everyone. But the minute something hurts a kid, they don't want to acknowledge that that could possibly be a part of that. So it's, and then if you have the conversation, you suddenly, people are like, oh, this guy's, crazy. And it's like, I'm not anti-vax. I've said it a million times. I would fight for everyone's right to get a vaccine on this fucking panel. I would fight for your right. And I hope you would fight for my right to say no to said vaccine.
Yeah. When I was in the Army, they would get ready to be sent overseas. You have to have a bunch of shots before you could go overseas. And I would stand in a long line, and they would have 6 or 8 guys with air guns that would shoot the vaccine in your arm, and you couldn't say no.
Yeah, well, welcome to the military. I remember when I first went to India, they were like, oh, you got to get a bunch of vaccines or you can't go. And I was like, no, that can't be true. And I went and did the research and found out through the embassy and everything that in fact, I did not need to get those vaccines whatsoever. And I went to India and I hung out for a long time and I just ate some acidophilus and some Swedish bitters. And I never got sick. I ate the food, I drank the water, I stayed away from the ice. And other than that, I was fine. But yeah, they were like, you have to get the vaccine if you want to go to India. And I was like, well, maybe if I was sick, maybe if I was an unhealthy person, I would think of that more. I would be like, well, this couldn't help. I'll give myself a little boost. But I think of myself as a fairly healthy person, take pretty good care of myself. I feel like for my age, I'm very healthy and I feel pretty good. I'm not carrying extra weight. I'm not like, my lungs feel pretty strong. I'm strong in the sense that I do a lot of weightlifting and taking care of myself. And yeah, it's I believe that, I kind of felt that during COVID that I knew people that were like, oh, I'm gonna get the vaccine. And I was like, you should get the vaccine. Like, fucking rights. I'm not going to, but I'm not gonna like COVID's not gonna kill me. In fact, I never even got it. Or if I did, I was one of those people that didn't realize that I had it, asymptomatic people or whatever. And some people I know that got it were like damn near, fucking died from it. So this is the beautiful choice, right? It's a nice choice to have for yourself that you make sure you do all the things. I guess it was Jeff earlier saying, in all things in life, we're always on that precipice of like danger and death. It's just right there. We're all kind of making our way closer and closer to it as we travel. And obviously, the things that will lead you there, either faster or slower or right on time, however you look at life, are your decisions. When my father was really, spontaneously killed in a motorcycle accident. It was very shocking. Both him and his wife, we were just shocked. It happened so fast and so shockingly that yeah, we were absolutely and completely shocked. And I started thinking about it in this real philosophical, super deep way that I was almost forced to via the trauma of losing my father at such a young age that I just realized every decision this fucking guy made his entire life led him to that moment. And not only him, also his wife. Every decision she ever made led her to that moment. And then I'm starting to think, holy fuck, the deer that jumped out of the forest onto the highway into their motorcycle, every decision that fucking deer made, every one led it right to that moment. And I thought, holy fuck, each and every one of them were perfectly on time for their death. Like they couldn't have been late and they couldn't have been early. It was like right when it was supposed to happen. It's a hard pill to swallow when it's like your father's death.
What a concept.
It was hard to deny. It's like, well, it's true. It's every decision my father made took him an extra second to put his sock on that day, and that took him down a different path, and made a right turn when he should have made a left turn, and that took him down a path. And it's just incredible the paths that our choices lead us down. I would say after to people, don't worry about your death. You're not going to be early and you're not going to be late. You will show up right on time.
And it can be random too at any time. So stay tuned.
Dude. Yeah, stay tuned. Holy shit.
Yeah, probability is like that, and it's really weird, like
Super
whatever your
weird.
odds of something, you only end up having the experience you have. So
Yeah.
sometimes in my life, I think that some very, very improbable things happened to me, or I had very improbable experiences. And but but still, right? Like I made choices all along the way that biased, like say the average of my outcomes, right? Like I didn't have no control, and a lot of my outcomes clearly had to do with choices I made earlier. So
Man.
Right.
it's
I had a
Oh
so
father.
man,
complicated.
I've
I had a
come
And
fa-
to understand it's important to take notes when you watch your show.
Your phone's
No shit. I should be doing that.
but I
yeah,
think
see,
what I would want is for people. I think but this is also hard, right? What you would really want, right? Like, so you choose to go to India without taking the vaccines, right? Then you like what I would want is that you appreciate like what kind of a risk you're taking, right? That like there's some chance you'll come home with a brain worm, right? And taking the vaccine might prevent that. So like,
Yep.
right, like, right, like, but it's oft like since all of the like it's kind of an improbable event that you're guarding against, but also like the vaccine side effect is improbable. Most people take them and are fine. So like like you're weighing one improbable hazard against another one. Probably whatever choice you make is okay. You
Yeah,
know,
that's kind of how it feels,
right?
It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like you
and you
got to
don't
make
have
your
enough basis.
choices.
You're never going to be able to learn enough to like, right? So I think with some of these choices, they're more like that, right? Like, and then
Yeah.
others, right?
It's
Like,
just you just
the
got to be
measles
able to have the
vaccine.
choices.
The
You got to
measles
be able to
vaccine, I'm
have
going to
it.
urge people to keep getting the measles vaccine. All right. Like the risks from that vaccine are way lower than the shit life you can get from measles. So, like,
Hmm. Yeah.
right.
But then think about it. Think
But it's
about the
super
people.
hard to do
Think
that, right?
think of how
Like,
many people have taken that measles vaccine and then manifested and created a life as shitty as having measles, but not having anything to do with measles, just living a terribly depressed, unhappy life where you're just smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol and addicted to pills. And, so it's all about free will and choice, and you have to be able to make your choices. And of course, the measles
yeah.
vaccine, you should have the right to get the measles vaccine. When my mom was a girl, she went to measles parties. They would just take the kids to get the measles. It's
Oh,
like that's
are you
what
sure?
that
Are
was
you
the
sure it was
reality of it.
measles? Really, they did that? Or I thought that was chicken pox. They did that.
No,
Or
no,
this
this was going back further than the chicken
Oh,
pox. Google measles party.
okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't
Yeah,
know. Ignorance is bliss.
trying to
Like,
get it early and
was it
yeah, in a
malice
mild
or was
case.
it
Yeah.
was it ignorance, right? Yeah, maybe it was
Yeah.
most likely ignorance, but it is
Who
what it
knows?
is.
Does everybody know about the SV40 contamination of polio vaccines?
Is that the monkey abuse serum 40?
Yeah, SV40, simian
Mm,
virus 40.
simian virus. Yeah, I know about it. It's
So
interesting.
the polio vaccine was contaminated because they developed it from rhesus monkeys. And apparently, the monkeys have simian virus 40 that causes tumors if you inject it in any mammal, but the monkeys are immune to it. So apparently, when they did this is before they knew about DNA, and the polio vaccine also had remnants of this monkey virus SV40, and was actually causing people that got the polio vaccine to have soft tissue tumors, and they hid that.
Hmm. Well, I think that yeah, concealing evidence is not good. Like, and yeah, that's interesting. I think that isn't that like that's like a really small like a viroid, right? It's a
I'm
really
not. I don't. I
the
couldn't tell you.
SV40. I think it's a really small like viroid that's really hard to even detect and purify out, or would have
They
been.
they they grow it on
I'm
monkey
not sure.
kidneys. Look it up.
Yeah. But yeah. No, it's interesting that yeah, I mean that there have been some, yeah. And I can also remember now I'm old enough. I can remember two or three times since I was in college when new classes of molecules were being developed as potential drugs. And with each one, there was, this happens once every 5 or 10 years that you see like some new class of molecules become in vogue, right? And it's like they have fashion in chemistry too. And with each one, there was some rationale of like why this is going to be a class of molecules that won't have side effects. And like whole classes of like in early development, whole classes of molecules that were really hot for a while would be completely abandoned because it turned out they do have terrible side effects that you totally didn't expect. You're like, oh, well, this is based on mRNA. And how could, it's so specific and this operates by such a specific interaction. How could this tag anything off target? And it always does. And it's because biochemistry is so complex. So we're always discovering more and more wrinkles and challenges and unintended consequences.
It's designer chemistry.
But we still try, like we still work at it and keep studying, even though we'll never know everything. Like we try.
Yeah, well, it's always learning. It's the frightening thing. Like, I feel like when I talk to highly intelligent people, I'm like, man, like the human race is smart as a whole.
No, but I agree
but
with
we
you
do
that
take a long time to learn.
When these pharmaceutical companies become really big businesses and they have to invest enormous amounts of their own money for the drug testing and safety, there are negative incentives that come from that, and I think that when you mention the desire to sweep under the rug harmful consequences, yeah, of course, a firm like that would have a lot of incentive to do that. And it's really dangerous for our society that pharmaceutical companies are advertising so much and are routinely in the top 5 industries for stock returns. So they're really safe investments. They always do well. Like those companies always do great, right?
Yeah. Even with the felonies,
risks.
It's $1 or $2 billion they have
those
to
are
pay.
all the risks. Like this has been a discussion of all those hazards of having a system like that is getting really hard to regulate. They are way more those guys are way more powerful. They have way more time. They have way more lawyers, right? So, I feel like I think that maybe the part of it where like the thing that makes me feel a little defensive sometimes is that sometimes I can really identify with a lot of the academically minded people and the scientists in the government and in the FDA. And I feel like they get a lot of the blame, but they're actually sitting there screaming about all the same stuff that you are, watching helplessly as they get plowed over by people with way more money. So, like, I feel like some of these failures have been weaponized against the scientists. And we've lost sight of the systems that created them, which was mostly the big money and the advertising. And some of these harmful consequences were prognosticated when the law was changed to allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise drugs on TV, which I can remember when it happened. I was a kid. I think I was in high school, maybe, or going to college. I can't recall.
I remember the late night commercials where it would be this like fun. Someone showed me the most beautiful meme. It was like pharmaceutical company commercials, and it was like the top where all these people, they were just like super phony and having like the best time, just laughing. And then the bottom was just like, it was kind of like a drawing. It wasn't an actual person. It was almost like the drawing of like a sign or something of people crossing, but it was just a guy leaning over and vomiting and shitting out of his ass at the same time. And it was kind of like the picture they sell you and then the truth of the actual matter. Did you see the new one with Ozempic that just happened? It's going to be a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. It's making people blind instantly, just overnight, and then they can't get their eyesight back. I can't remember the name of it, but it's 100% from Ozempic, that drug that helps you lose weight. I was like, that seems reasonable.
You give a drug to like 1 billion people, you're bound to have a few of them that have some kind of really horrible reaction.
I mean, that's the way the pharmaceutical company wants to train you to reply if you have a medical license, I'll tell you that much. But the reality is at one point in time, you have to look at it like, wow, I wonder if this corruption is like causing this problem where it's like you're pushing it. If only it were that. What you say is what it should be. I'm not 100% that's what it is. But it should be
Well,
that.
I think it's a little bit of column A and column B. It's more like it's more like a spectrum.
Likely.
It's kind of a spectrum where
Right.
we push back, we we get better at, and a lot of the I feel like a lot of the ways that you kind of improve it are by shining lights and shining lights on how the process works, which is like really hard.
Well,
If only
Uh,
it was
because
just
blindness
because
is
then
absolute.
you start learning, because a lot of what makes things happen is attention, you know, like public attention.
Well,
Um,
blindness is well, I mean, for me, as we were talking earlier, about, conditions, I grew up with a blind father and a blind brother. So I expect everybody to have blindness in their family. Oh, it doesn't happen. Well, I spent my childhood also going to conventions for the blind because my mom spoke as a and was an early outspoken person as a person who had a child who was blind and the challenges that it is having a blind parent. And while there, I met all kinds of people going blind for all kinds of reasons. The most common one, diabetes. They don't take care of themselves and their diabetes can cause blindness. But Ozempic going blindness and instant blindness, oh, that's horrible. I mean, on a level, because I watch people slowly lose their eyesight as their eyes go through their atrophy as they reach their full blindness, and it's absolutely tragic. My father could see colors until the age of 12 and then develop glaucoma. How cruel is that? Right, he was blind but could see colors, then developed glaucoma and then could no longer see colors.
uh,
That's a major impact that you have. Now imagine being able to see everything and then immediately going gone. I mean, that's
well, listen, the kid that I
unbearable.
grew up with, I'll never forget Dylan Mazer. He was a good friend of mine, and I can't remember the name of his disease. It was a degenerate eye disease. And what his eyesight was doing was the hole was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until he was just seeing out of a pinhole, and then until that disappeared as well. And I was friends with him. He hadn't gone quite blind by the time we sort of went our separate ways through schooling and whatnot, but this poor kid had no peripheral vision. Like, but when I knew him, he couldn't see your hands if they were right here. Like, he really just had these two strips of vision, and he was positive about it. He certainly wasn't as negative as I think I would have been if that was happening to me. But it is incredible the things that human beings can go through. And I guess when you lose one sense, you tune into these other senses in a way that maybe people with all of their senses don't ever really get to do. So still pretty heavy. It's very heavy for you too, Etienne, having a blind father and a blind brother. Like that must have been very unique growing up in that home.
It was easy growing up in the home. It was problem growing up. Well, my mom and dad separated when I was one because he was a con artist because he became the first blind lawyer in Louisiana. And oddly enough, I would find his first crime on eBay recently.
What?
Um, yeah. Yeah, it's really kind of crazy. I did a search for my dad's last name, and inadvertently, he became the first blind lawyer because he had an amazing memory. So, everybody he was around him said he was amazing, but he couldn't get work. And this is even before the 1964 Disabilities Act. And in 1964, yeah, that's when that happened. So I happened to do a search on eBay and found this picture of my father giving a statement to a New Orleans police officer. And the opposite side of the picture was the actual news article. And it was from, I guess, a newspaper sold their archives or whatever, and so somebody sells the archival pictures. And somebody smartly put the on the back of the picture the article, and the article states, and if you want, I can pull up the picture too, because I bought it. I was just like, wait a second. Okay, so what happened was, or the story I was told by my mother, is that my father faked being robbed, and then the robber then took his law files as well as the money in his wallet. And so this happened once. It was in the newspaper. I have the actual article. I have the picture and the article. And so apparently it happened again. And then when I was 1 years old, it happened again. And this time, the officer who was in the picture originally was now a detective. And so he was doing the research. You remember, wait a second, blind guy
What coincidence.
robbed in a bathroom of not only his money, but his law files. Okay. And yeah, so that's when my mom was like, you get the fuck out of the house. You're a lying piece of shit. Because the detective basically came and told her, said, no, 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 no. This is not the first time he did it. Because that my dad told my mom, oh, this is the first time I ever did that. Sorry, I just needed the money. No, 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 no. The detective shows up at the house, is like, Mrs. Fontan, thought you should know. I am the actual officer who took the original statement from your husband before he was your husband back in 1960, back in whatever. So it's like, oh shit. So yeah, so the problem was for me, Marcus, was growing up in southern Louisiana, and my brother was born without eyeballs. He did not develop eyeballs nor an optic nerve. So it's a very rare situation, and so his eyes are sunken in. So to most people, he looks like a circus freak. So just going to town, which I lived in a small country town, literally, I graduated in a high school class of 19 people, public school, very rural. Okay. So when you go to town, I would escort my brother around because I'm the youngest, but I'm a boy, so I can take him into the men's room. And yeah, people would literally walk behind me backwards, staring at my brother because he looks like a circus freak. They've never seen anything like it. It looks a little bizarre. And yeah, I grew up with that, as well as taking him to the bathroom and then getting assaulted in the bathroom because I want to take my brother out, but people want to stare and, at my brother because he's, has a condition. So yeah, it was a double-edged sword. It helped me deal with a lot of things at an early age, but growing up in the deep South with somebody with a disability was traumatizing consistently because of the inability to have compassion and empathy. It was really frustrating. And you know how challenging it is to lead a blind person around New Orleans? New Orleans is below sea level, so it's constantly degrading in all unique spots. So it's challenging to walk as a sober person, and half of everybody in New Orleans is drunk at any given time.
I was gonna say, are there sober people in New Orleans?
A small percentage, and that's the delivery people, but
That's
everybody
awesome.
else is steadily drunk. So between dodging people and ground, it's its own set of challenges. But
Dude, while you're telling this story, Emid Otter is in the group. He's like, oh, I thought the picture of frosty grass was Etienne's dreads up in a bun, but it's cannabis. I'm putting the bong down now.
never
Can't
had
see
dreads.
it.
That's hilarious.
Dude, it's actually pretty good. You can't look directly and see it, but if you kind of look away from you while you're on the screen and do the peripheral glance, you can see this sort of like, that's awesome. Good on you, Emid.
I agree. The corner of my eye, it's like, oh, dude's wearing a really interesting hat or has a neat hairdo.
Right? Absolutely. Man, I want to give away I don't know, some type of something today from the press club. I don't know if it'll be some of their new double stacked bags, so you don't have to do it yourself, which is a huge pain in the ass for people that press rosin. I don't know how many of you guys on the panel have been pressing rosin, but the biggest pain in the ass when you press rosin. No shit, that's your dad, dude? Dude, that's fucking crazy. That's
Yeah, that's my
wild.
dad. So there he is giving his original statement. And I found this randomly on eBay, right? I mean, what are the odds, right? You know what I'm saying?
Dude, that's incredible. Did you buy it?
Yeah, I own it. That's why I photo
Fucking
scanned it,
rights you did,
right?
dude.
I
I
was
knew
like,
it.
how could you not own,
I know.
the sins of the father are told by the son, right? So, for me, yeah, this was April 19th of 2024, right before 420, I got it.
Wow.
It was
Nice.
just one of those things where you're like, wait a second, is that my dad? Holy shit, that is my dad. Wait, why is my dad in? Oh shit, it's the actual photo from the Times-Picayune in New Orleans from when, oh shit, oh my God, I cannot believe it. Yeah, how weird is that, right? I mean, what's the odds of you actually hearing of a story that was in your family and then one day actually not only finding your father's crime, but finding the actual newspaper article that goes along with it, right? I
No,
mean,
it's insane, dude.
what's is that some random weird shit in life, folks, or what? I don't know. Oh, here it is. And here is just to show you too. Dun, 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 dun. And that's the article on the back.
Shit.
A gunman took
1964.
A gunman took $23 from a blind New Orleans lawyer in the sixth floor restroom of the Hibernia Bank building on Carondelet this
How much
morning.
money?
$23.
How did he know he had a gun if he was blind?
He felt it thrust into it says right there, it was thrust into his ribs.
Oh my God, that's fucking
So he painted
hilarious.
his own picture. You know what I'm saying? So,
It was almost on April 20th. It's just
right?
4 days after 420.
How bizarre, right?
And like 10 years before 420 became a thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's a wild story, man. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's
I
super
mean,
trippy, dude.
this guy's like, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this guy got people to believe multiple times that a person was willing to rob a blind person in a bathroom for like pocket money.
Dude, I bet you if a blind person told you a
Like,
lie too, you were just
Well,
like, there's
23
no
bucks
reason
in the
this blind guy's
1960s
lying.
was a lot of money. You know what I'm
Yeah, it was.
saying?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I mean, yeah, when I say
It's
pocket,
not
I
like a
mean, it's
dollar
like,
today,
no, it's pocket money though, right? I mean, it's like it was a cash economy at that time, right? That might be what you would carry around, right? Like to be
Yeah.
prepared. I don't know. It's a
Well,
little much, right? I take your point, right? But like, I don't know, man. Like, wow, what a dastardly thing. Like holding up a blind person in the bathroom. Like,
And
well,
what a
and you would
dastardly
never.
thing for that blind person to dream up to get away with it, not once, not twice, but then to do it a third time, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I bet you most
That's a
people.
sociopath behavior right there, if I've ever seen.
Jesus.
well, I mean, when something got you out of a jam once, right? Like,
There was no
yeah, I don't
computers
know.
back then to keep the records, so it's easier to repeat those things.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it's
That's
time
true.
for a
Yeah, in
derb
small
here.
towns, non-digitized records. Yeah.
What's everyone puffing on?
Oh, what am I puffing on?
No. I saw Caleb puffing on a fat joint of something delicious earlier.
He's been doing that the wand, and he's been low temping his herb. He said, "What'd you say you're doing around two something?"
Yeah, like 240. It's 125 on the Celsius meter, but like it's, it just gets hot and keeps going. I've got some of the mix that you gave me, Etienne.
Uh-oh.
I love me some mix. I used to call it the
In the
lucky
pit.
day. People be like, why is it called lucky day? I'm like, because it's never going to happen again. I'm never going to have these ones all put together to give to you.
It's a one-time experiment.
That's it. That's it. Don't ask for any more because I can't give it to you.
I just have a
That is-
stupid cartridge. And the reason why is because I bought a new hash product at the store yesterday, and I thought it was going to be like hash rosin, and I was going to try out my new. I just got the Daybreak Puffco Peak Pro, and so I was going to like break that bad boy out, and then it turned out it's like no, it's like old school hash. It's not Puffco material. So I smoked a big joint with a bunch of it broken up in it outside before I joined you guys, and I might step out again. I don't combust in the apartment.
Yes. Well, you know, as a joint smoker of past days, and from being from prohibition days, it'll always sound natural for me to hear someone say, "Oh, we stepped out and went and smoked a joint or whatever." You know, we've always been like, in fact, I picture you crumpling in behind a BFI can, because that's really how, you know, my first joint I ever smoked was hunched in behind a dumpster.
Oh yeah.
We
No,
went behind the store and then we hid
my
behind the
first time,
dumpster.
my first time smoking was like this dime bag that some guy bought on the corner in Poughkeepsie on his way up to Hudson to like meet us, and we smoked it off of a ginger ale can.
Classic.
I like smoking joints and I like hash. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, it's old school hash. Okay, that's fine. So, you know, I now what I smoke joints on a regular basis in the at the smoking bench where everyone else in my apartment complex goes to smoke cigarettes. And I just hang out with my joint and I'm just like, yep, I'm smoking too. Oh,
Hell
nice.
yeah. Yeah, just drinking some kombucha, and people are always like, "What was the label on your can?" I'm like, "I'll just hold it up so I don't have to answer that question 43 times in the comment section later." Remedy kombucha, zero sugar. Not many drinks you can get out there today that don't have like 50 grams of sugar, let alone zero. But yeah, zero's good. I'm definitely I feel like I don't need any more sugar in my life. I think I'm like at the top of my like I just I don't need any more of it, but they keep putting it in everything.
Yeah.
It's definitely a bummer. It's interesting when you stop consuming sugar, you simultaneously stop consuming almost everything that you can buy at a gas station.
Yeah.
Just like that. It's just like
Yeah.
boom, there's no more access.
I'm still bummed out that I'm still bummed out at the amount of starches and sugars that are just an inherent part of the beer that I like so much.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, that'll give you a little gut if you go too hard on that one.
That's always that's the thing I'm working. I'm always like I don't eat sweets or anything else anymore because I'm like, all right, no, I got to save up that sugar and
For,
starch budget for one thing, you know.
I like that. I like that. I got to save up my sugar and starch budget. That's awesome. I mean, that's the way it is, right? We all got to kind of make our decisions. Like, where are you going to go
I'm
with
like,
this?
well,
Like, what do you want to do?
if I'm gonna drink a loaf of bread tonight,
Oh my God.
I better eat some meat and salad.
That's awesome. Very good. Yeah, I miss the boat on beer, man. I never, I have friends that just love it. All the different flavor profiles and aromatic inebriants. And I just never got into beer or alcohol of any sort. It was another one that I repelled. It was repellent to me. And I am thankful for that because yeah, I don't know. I've never needed it in my life, especially
I
to
feel that.
gather. You feel that as well, Caleb? Are you not on
Yeah, I'm
the
actually allergic to alcohol, so when you were showing the
Yeah,
kombucha, I
mine
was
too.
wondering, there's probably too much alcohol in there for me even.
No, I don't think so.
I can't take alcohol either anymore. Marcus, did you see this a
Cannabis.
week that came out about Canada? How Canada's cannabis industry contributes more than $76 billion to Canada's GDP, generating over 100K jobs annually in
Yeah,
your
that's
country.
insane. Yeah, I saw it. I
That's
saw it.
that's not small.
No, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. It's
Any thoughts?
well, I'm glad
I
that
mean,
we're
you've watched
producing
it go from
jobs.
the you've gone from the, getting busted to being an LP, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
listen, I'm stoked that cannabis is available. I find that the one thing, if you were an activist and you got this happen, you were a part of this thing that like hemp and cannabis and medical and recreational, and you don't care who profits, you're just happy. If you saw it happening with a specific group of people profiting, then you're very unhappy right now. See, I went to the school of Dave Watson, and Dave, from a very young, it was the first most shocking thing he ever said to me. He said, he just looked right at me and said, "You don't understand. I don't care who profits from it. I'm just fighting for access. I just want the world to have access. And then whoever profits from it, good for them. Woohoo, right on. But I don't give a fuck who it is." And I was like, okay, I never thought of that before. I kind of thought we would all be the ones to profit. And the minute I removed myself from that component, I was always less mad in the, now the legalization aspect of cannabis that we're in, at least here in Canada. Are there things to complain about? Of course. There's always something to complain about. The taxes are too high, the packaging's bad, the blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, I think we forget, guys, like this went to like the Queen's throne, the Queen's descent, or whatever it's called. Like this was like a real federal law that got changed with the crown and the prime minister. Like this was a major fucking thing to happen. And there's repercussions globally when a country like Canada does that. And it's more than just the simplicity of what we think it is. Oh yeah, we just legalized cannabis. So I get that it's going to take a while, and that there's still going to be some slow movement in regards to how fast we get to, the same lie that we're telling in Canada through our federal legalization is that, and I'm not saying that we should give it to all kids, but you don't need to protect children from cannabis quite the way you think you do. Like, in my opinion, the highest way, like, are kids like going into stores and buying no, if you want to protect kids from cannabis, just make sure the gummies are packaged a specific way and that they're not accessible, because that's the most likely thing a kid would eat. But in Canada, we still tell the lie that we have to protect children from cannabis. And, that was why you couldn't see into any cannabis store for the first like 5 years of business. They had like foggy, you had to cover the windows completely. You couldn't see into the store, which, in my opinion, created a more dangerous environment for the people working in the stores, because now if you go in there and just lock the door, you can rob them, and no one out on the street can see what's happening. You're protected in this closed off room. So finally that changed, but that was, believe it or not, they thought, and still to this day, I can bring my son who's 10, I can bring him to the liquor store today and buy a vat of Jack Daniels, which is enough to kill like 19 people. Or I could go to the cannabis store and make him wait outside, because he's not allowed to even go into the cannabis store, because for him to even see a cannabis product on the shelf from outside the street into the store would put him at risk in some way. And this is the ridiculousness of the fallacy of the lie, the narrative that you need to protect children from cannabis. Once you tell that story, you can, go down this whole other pathway of absurdity. So we have that absurdity, but we also, I could just go buy like haze and like melty bubbles and live hash rosins, and like there's like a 200 fucking stores within probably less than 40 minutes from my house. It's pretty cool. The normalization in Canada that now like just regular people are talking about weed. Like, oh yeah, I bought these gummies from the so and so company. They're pretty good. Oh yeah, I bought some of those joints, and it's really neat to hear people, you know, trying cannabis for the first time, basically because the government is allowing it. You know, there were those people that were like, no, it's illegal. You can't do it. It's like, well, even like to save your child's life, nope, it's illegal. It's like, and then all of a sudden it's legal, and they're like, this is amazing. I'm trying it all. I'm drinking beverages. I'm smoking joints. I've got a fucking CBD suppository up my ass right now. I love legal cannabis. Telling you, it's so it's cool. It's cool. We're happy in Canada. It's much like my chagrin of the pharma, of the meat industry. Like, do I believe they're important? Of course. Do I believe we need the military and the police? Of course. I just wish we could do better as a human race, where things didn't have to so easily become corrupted. And I get that that is difficult because corruption is palpable. And also, the level of corruption I'm talking about, no one on this panel can even fathom. You have no idea what it's like to be offered hundreds of millions of dollars. You know what I mean? There's no understanding of how much that would change your life and the generations of your family's lives if you wanted it to. You know, we live in a world where we are a slave to wages, where we really have. So it's like, you know, I get it. I saw it with I see this division in life all the time, and it always seems to be like, if you want to do like natural, if you want to be organic, if you want to be, there's always this industrial military complex that's just like, no, you can't do that. It's always the same division. We see it with cannabis. Oh, it's got to be living soil and organic and regenerative. It's like, no, let's build huge 50,000 light rooms with salt nutrients, and it's just yeah, the dichotomy of it is sometimes a little bit too much to handle, but
Yeah.
here
Well,
we are.
as someone who is working right now to fight against corruption in our state cannabis regulator, I can tell you that the way that it works is, you know, it takes constant attention and creativity to keep corruption down. It can happen for the pettiest or smallest of rewards sometimes. Like, it's shocking what can happen. And but like what I actually want people to remember a lot of times is that corruption also feeds on our cynicism and our belief that it could never work better. And in fact, our system works X well now, where X is some number between 0 and 100%, say, right? Like, and it's a lot better than no system. And it is
I guess
not
it
as good as
depends
it
on
could
where
be.
you fall in the system.
And
It depends on your position in the
the way that
system.
the way that we make it, but like, you know, but actually, like, bad things don't always happen. And
No.
corruption does get cleaned up and rooted out, and things get improved and fixed sometimes. And it's actually, there are, and a lot of the ways that we can help that happen is just by paying attention and like learning how the system works. And that's like,
So you're saying build
so what I
a
try to do
hyper
from my perspective,
surveillance
I'm
system like
always trying to
China?
help people. Well,
I'm just
what I
joking.
mean is
I
stuff
will
like,
say this
for
though.
example, like, I have had a lot of success at drawing attention to some things that happened and making some things change in Massachusetts by
Mhm.
by drawing attention to certain events within public meetings of the Control
Right.
Commission. And the
Right.
challenge is, these meetings are 6.5 hours long. So nobody has the fucking time and energy to sit there, and it's all Robert's rules stuff and really slow talking, and then these arcane arguments, right? But like, like, what I've learned recently is that, like, if I pick out little video clips and write transcripts and interpret them for people, then people understand some of what happened in like that meeting. And all of those people participating in those meetings start noticing that people are paying attention, right? And they are, people actually know their names.
Gotta shine your flashlight on them,
And
eh?
like, and I'm talking about an audience of like I'm excited when I'm excited that I got almost 100 people to my website, right? It's a small number of people, but this is really small politics, right? And you know, a lot of times things get fixed when someone like energetic enough just gets up to, and I'm not the only person who's drawn attention to it, but I've just learned a lot from like a very small scale example of how these things are put together, like what the kind of Lego bricks are, that corruption and these big things that we fight against, like what they're made out of. And
Mhm.
and like from what I understand, like you know like one thing that happened in our commission was that there was a guy who was the boss of the whole thing, who for like for a couple of years he had one foot out the door, and he was applying for jobs, and he was telling everybody he was going to quit anytime, and he did that for his last 2 years, and that's a recipe for what you call regulatory capture. So when you learn about, right, and it's really small, nobody ever gave him a briefcase of money. But like, those are the kinds of things that you learn to, and I've learned that there's other people who do it, who
I
kind
think
of
I think a
corrupt it.
briefcase of money is just the metaphor of gaining
I
something
know,
for yourself at the expense of others. Is it always a
I
briefcase
know,
of money? No, that's the problem with corruption.
I
Fuck,
know,
it could be
I know,
about a
but
pair of Nike
yeah,
shoes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's partly like, to some degree, those are the internal narratives that the corrupted people are telling themselves. Is they're like, well, this isn't like, I'm not taking a briefcase of money or something,
Oh,
It's so
100%. No, I
funny,
think
It's
it's very
like,
natural.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, yeah. It's very,
It's human nature, in fact.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
kind of see it in like I watched this thing with my kid. He loves Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast got given like I don't know how much money from Jeff Bezos to do some weird like game show, but it's unlike any game show you've ever seen. And he puts these people into these psychological positions where they have to pretend they're virtue signaling like crazy to one another because you want everyone to like you, because in these challenges you can get bumped out by just doing it's this. I can't even really describe it, but so they're all virtue signaling to everyone. Oh no, I'm looking out for you, I'm looking out for the team, even though only one person is winning the contest out of the 1,000 people that start. They have to pretend that, oh, I'm here to protect you as much as I'm here to protect me. But when the shit comes down to it, they'll literally, when it's like, oh, there's $500,000 sitting there and everyone, okay, we're all just going to take 100 grand. And the second guy's like, I'm taking it all. And that's human nature that is shown in that moment where you're like, and he's just like, listen, I don't know any of you. I don't give a shit about any of you. I'm doing this for my family. And they're all still in the virtue signaling phase of the game because they just had all the money taken from them. So yeah, it is what it is. Humans are strange beings. Also awesome beings. I love to gather with you guys every Sunday and puff bowls and go into these conversations. I feel there's importance in dialogue, and there should be, there shouldn't really be anything that you can't talk about and feel like, it's okay to disagree with one another. It's okay to I feel that once you start judging someone from their perspectives too harshly, you really cut yourself off from learning about really something super important because it's something you don't know about. It's someone else's perspective that you hold the opposite perspective. Terence McKenna always said that belief system was the anchor of mankind, because if you believed something fervently enough, it blinded you to any other possibilities of that happening outside of your belief system, which I always thought was a profound statement and sounds more intense when you're super high on mushrooms. But even on a Sunday morning, baked on some weed, you can feel it. You can feel it. It's there.
You know what I believe? I believe with my heart that they should release the Epstein files. There. Yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah, I don't think that we
I
should be
said it.
protecting the worst people in the world, right? I'm with you. Release the files, you sons of bitches. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna give away, and perfect timing because it just hit 73 entries. Let's see if I can get it up before it changes. 73 entries. Look at that. It just changed as I got it up. So as always, I don't know what the press club is going to send you. It could be a spoon. It could be some of these cool new bags, double stitched bags, double bagged, double stitched bags. Um, but you have to send me an email at bcbubbleman@icloud.com immediately after you win so I can confirm that who you are in the chat with an actual email. So that's important to do. 79. I think I'm just going to choose a winner here.
You want to get a bunch of people, ask when everybody's smoking, and then watch the everything just blow the fuck up. What is
All right,
everybody?
what's everybody, or where is everybody? Tell me where you are and tell me what you're smoking.
Oh, there it goes.
Let's see, we got 85. I think, I don't know if we'll
Let
get
me
more
know
than
if someone
100,
says
but we'll
they're on
see.
the toilet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? The only time, and you know what? Your son never did come back in, but the only time Dr. Mark's son came into Hash Church, he accidentally came in on the toilet. He's like, he turned on his phone accidentally, went live, and it was just his feet. That's all. It was just his feet.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, what the heck? And then he went off right away. It was like super quick. And then I was like, dude, who the fuck was that? He's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that's my son. I was
He's
like,
not ready
that's
for
such an
Hash
incredible,
Church.
that's such an incredible parental moment. I can't even tell you. That is so much like what it's like having children. Like I can't even express to you. Like Dr.
Yes.
Mark, revered Hash Church panelist, PhD chemist, like fucking dudes dropping knowledge left, right, and center. First time he invites his son, who I'm sure is brilliant and awesome and amazing. But of course, he comes in on the toilet with his pants down around his ankles. It was incredible and amazing. And Jake, it's Jake, right?
Yes.
Yes, we love you, Jake.
Yeah.
We do
Very
want you to come back on
humiliating.
Hash Church one day, and could have happened to any of us.
Very humiliating.
Yes.
Well,
Well, humbling, let's say, because we have love. You don't have to be humiliated. Just be humbled. It's yeah, of course. It's embarrassing.
well, that got the numbers up.
It sure did. Over 109. I'm going to choose a winner at right now at 110. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Who's getting that something from the press club? Angel Saria. Angel Saria. There it is. Do you see your name, Angel? Angel? Do you see it? Do you see it? So bingo, if you can put my chat or my email into the chat, Angel Soria, you won. Well, that's nice. It's always nice to share the goodness with people. Hopefully she sends me the email right away so I don't have to give it away again, because really that's the trick, making sure you confirm who this no name, it's always just a random name, right? The first one was Ben Inya, if you can imagine. Ben Inya. I had no idea it was like a
You're
play
never
on.
gonna live that down.
No, of course not. I didn't know it was Ben Inya. I was like, oh, Ben Inya. I think it was you, Etienne, who was like, ah, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah,
Ben
yeah,
Inya.
yeah.
It's from New
Yeah.
Orleans. They know all about that.
Yeah, we are all about street shit there. So we were talking prior what we were smoking on. I'm smoking on this rosin tabs Guavacito by looks like Luna Farms. Luna Farms, yeah. So that's what I'm puffing on.
I was puffing on guava too, but I think the jar is in the other room right now. Really nice stuff though. Good
What are
flavor
you parking
profile.
on, Mark? Dr. Sheldon, sorry.
HHCA.
You HHCAing in the Puffco?
How's that feel?
Dr. Mark's a savage.
What?
Yeah. That's great. It's yeah, it's very mellow.
God.
Yeah. Just what the doctor
Did
orders,
you make
honestly.
that?
What's that?
Did you make that?
Yeah, did I make that? Right, right. Yeah, it's my Shulgin moment, right? I when I
That's
got up
hilarious.
there, I got up there, Jeff at CanMed, which was the McKernan's, cannabis conference back in 2017 at Harvard Medical School. Showed a little vial of white powder like this and said, "Yeah, I made this," and then I consumed it. But I mean, all kidding aside, I mean, it's not just hydrogenating the molecule itself, just, like, so the dehydrogenated version is CBN, the hydrogenated version is HHC. So we're just adding hydrogen to a molecule that is used to losing and gaining hydrogen. So I don't think it's, as experimental as it might seem.
No, I know
So,
what you mean. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the penthouse of the old chemistry building at UVM where the hydrogenators were.
oh
They
yeah.
had like they had the old school shakers because you don't stir it, right?
Yeah. Shaken, not
Like
stirred. Yeah, the par shaker, right?
yeah, or it was a nice gentle rocker that was made to
Yeah,
not,
we have
especially for it's not, everything's made to not throw sparks no matter what, right?
right.
And
Not blow
pressurize
yourself
that
up.
thing with, 5 or 10 psi of hydrogen and turn her loose.
Yeah, I typically I
Hope
so
for the
to make
best.
this I run 65 psi
Yeah, I
in
bet it
like
takes a
a
lot of psi to
it
hydrogenate that all the way up.
yeah, in like a 20 molar solution in methanol, and it's done in like a half hour or an hour. So I follow it by
That's the way to
GCMS.
make them go. The higher you can crank up that pressure, they go, yeah, it gets way
Yeah, what
faster.
you're doing
It's like
is
turning up the
you're
temperature on other reactions.
exactly. You're literally pushing the hydrogen into the solvent. And so
Yeah.
you could really see a difference between the solubility of hydrogen in methanol versus ethanol. Ethanol's got a little higher viscosity, but methanol just readily absorbs hydrogen. And yeah, that hydrogenation is done in, yeah, literally like about a half hour to an hour at that catalyst loading.
'Cause
But here's a
yeah,
really cool thing.
I was an impatient wuss when I started, so I had a lot of incomplete hydrogenations early on, and then someone gave me this other pressure chamber, and I just cranked it up, and I was like, oh, why didn't I do it? What an idiot!
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, typically, right, Jeff, you'd go into a lab and you'd see these little balloons filled with hydrogen over a
oh
stirring
my God,
vessel,
that's
right?
such bullshit, man. I would not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I refused to live my life. I tried that a few times, and I refused to live my life that way. Like that is for the
Yeah.
fucking birds, dude. Like waiting
Yeah,
for a
no,
hydration
it's a
under a
different
balloon.
game when you could put some PSIs on.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
have
yeah.
I have what's called
It's
a
worth the walk. I just go for a walk through the building, stick my head in the doors. Like anybody got a pressure chamber? Like someone's got one in your building, man. And like it's worth like that is the fastest way to get it done. Don't sit there with the fucking balloon.
yeah, no, I have a
What is
small
that?
little
1.01 atmospheres?
I have a small little pressure vessel that I could crank up to like 1,000 or maybe like about 100 psi. But I also
Yeah,
have like a full like 1 liter par shaker, which I use all the time.
that's
But the really
badass,
cool
man.
thing I was going to tell you, Jeff, is that so when you hydrogenate THCA, you make a mixture at the new stereogenic center, right? So the nine position of the ring, you make the 9R and the 9S isomer. And what's known with HHC anyway, is that the 9R isomer is more active at CB1 than the 9S isomer because the 9R, the methyl occupies kind of like this pseudo equatorial kind of configuration, which is more similar to delta 9 itself,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
delta
because
9
it's got the
has
double
got a
bond that makes the same thing.
sp2 carbon there, right? So it's
Yeah.
completely planar. But the weird thing, so here's what we see with the acids. So the acids aren't substrates for the CB1 and CB2 receptor. If you look at
Right.
THCA versus THC. It's like two orders of magnitude, right? So the acids don't hit the receptor, but what the acids hit are different things like TRPV1 and
Hmm.
PPAR. We were talking before about the analgesic properties of the
Yeah,
cannabinoid
yeah. They hit some of
acids.
those other inflammatory cascade ones,
That's
right? Like
right. And their
alpha.
analgesic properties are through not through the CB1 receptors. So what we've done is we use chiral chromatography now to separate the 9R from the 9S isomer. And I showed this
So that's
data.
chirally separated?
Yeah, so we use chiral separation, even though they're diastereomers. They're diastereomers, but they come right on top of each
Yeah,
other
some
in
diastereom
the
shit.
chromatography. But when you use a chiral separation, a chiral medium, you could get better separation. Well, anyway, what we're finding is that the 9S isomer is more active than the 9R isomer of the acid. So that's cool
Oh,
because with the decarboxylated one, the R is more active than the S. We're finding the S one is more
yeah.
active than the R. So stay tuned. We're writing a paper on this right now. And
But
what
the
we'd like to
decarbox.
do,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say what we'd like to do now. So we've made esters of the acid. And what we find is that the esters are a little bit more separable because you're adding, a little bit of
Sure.
hydrophobic
If we give it a
group
little
on
more,
there.
yeah, giving it a little more spinach there, right? Like
Right.
basically.
But
Yeah.
like the last thing that Meshulam did before he died was
I've
he
done
was
drinks like
looking
that.
at CBDA methyl ester because he had a set of data that showed that CBDA was like 10 times more active than CBD. But what's profoundingly complex with CBDA is that it readily decarboxylates. So he had made the methyl ester of CBDA.
To lock it
And
in.
right. And so then what happens in the body is that the methyl ester is ultimately
Yeah.
hydrolyzed to the
Yeah.
acid. And now it's kind of like a way of unveiling the acid, kind of like as a prodrug. So it's so fucking cool, man, because, you know, Dr. Dave, who was on before, and I have traded this one paper that talked about how the acids, again, don't act on the cannabinoid receptors, but they act on a different set of receptors. And then you have the decarboxylated cannabinoids, which act on the cannabinoid receptors. It's like, and then you have CBG, which is like completely has its own pharmacology unto itself. So
And
all these
um,
cannabinoids really do have different and orthogonal biochemical targets in the body. So there's no wonder that, full spectrum cannabinoid extracts, and even like with these flavonoids, these what they call flavoalkaloids, you could understand how, again, getting the whole plant, whether you're juicing, so if you're juicing the leaves, you're getting these flavoalkaloids, right? If you're smoking concentrates, you're getting decarboxylated, cannabinoids. If you're doing tinctures, you're getting the acids. It's kind of like if you like Star Trek Next Generation, it's a Jean-Luc fire all weapons moment, right? I mean, it's like everything that the cannabis plant can offer it in so many different ways that hit so many different relevant biological receptors. Jeff, we
I'm
talked about
curious about
this
the. I
before
was
on
curious
on
about the. I was curious about the decarboxylation of
yeah.
HHCA because
Yeah, so
yeah, because right, the decarboxylations of every cannabinoid acid are actually different in their yield and their rate, right? And I've
yeah,
looked
so
into
you can
some,
you
and it's
can
not
melt
even.
you can melt HHCA without decarboxylating it, but similar to THCA, it'll start decarboxylating about 100 centigrade. So at about
Yeah.
100 degrees centigrade, you'll start to see. And so what I'll do, Jeff,
Yeah,
is I'll take a
so
little
many
bit like this.
processes become observable so long before they become facile, right? Like
Well,
so long
the
before
the,
a
the
nice
interesting thing, the
process.
interesting thing is that with THCA, when you decarboxylate it, if you don't flush it either with a atmosphere of nitrogen or argon, immediately
Yeah.
your THCA will start to turn color. And so what
Yeah,
happens
yeah,
is
yeah. No,
as
there's
it's
probably
heating up
radical
in the presence of
processes.
air, it
Yeah.
starts to form that
There's actually,
hydroquinone, which is a
yeah.
highly colored compound. But this doesn't form the color, which is really super interesting. And the other thing that I found out, which is also
Well, yeah, it's
super,
fully hydrogenated, right? So it doesn't,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's fully hydrogenated. The other
So
thing I
yeah,
found
yeah.
was super interesting is that we're helping. Do you know Darwin Millard, who runs the ASTM group on
Yeah. But
cannabis?
it is funny, yeah, because like you're changing history,
So Darwin, Darwin calls himself the Spock of cannabis. We'll have to have Darwin on
right?
sometime, Marcus. He's a Canadian, and he's kind of funny, but he's totally
Oh, you
like this
should, yeah.
cannabis nerd. He's not a chemist. I think he's an engineer by training. But anyway, he wanted some slides around Delta 8, because there's interesting aspects about Delta 8, Delta 8 when they're making it from CBD makes a bunch of different non-natural isomer products. But I told him, I said, well, you can make, if Delta 8 is what you want, you can make it cleanly from decarboxylated THCA. So you can make it clean from Delta 9. He's like, oh man, he's like, can you send me a chromatogram? So I sent him a chromatogram and showed him. So when you take THCA, crystalline purified THCA, and you decarboxylate it under an inert atmosphere of nitrogen or argon, yeah, you could make clean Delta 9 THCA to where you only get one peak in the spectrum. When you now take that material, you could treat it with a little bit of catalyst and you could isomerize that to delta 8. Now also you get cleanly one peak. You don't get multiple peaks, you get cleanly one peak. So
Mhm.
the first time that delta 8 kind of reared its ugly head, at least from what I remember, was when Chris Barone and the Clear people in California were adding so-called bleaching clays, right, which were montmorillonite, bentonite type
Hmm.
clays. They were adding these clays to pots of dirty distillate that often were dirty, color and smelly and often
Yeah,
probably
it's one
pesticide
of
laden
this is one of these. It's like
distillate
one of those old school chemistry purification methods for remediating something. Like
for
it's like when
remediating
you're
something,
desperate
right?
and you add the activated charcoal. You're like, maybe this will work.
But what they didn't realize, Jeff, what they didn't realize is that the clay is acidic. And so by adding the acidic clay to their pot of dirty distillate, they took the naturally occurring delta 9 and isomerized it over to delta 8. So then they were doing a poop distillation and
Especially if
distilling
you
out
distill
this
off
this
of it. That's like,
clear distillate. I mean, it looked like water. It was water white. In fact, they were the labs at the time were not sophisticated enough to distinguish between delta 8 and delta 9. ATN, you might remember this. So the clear, when the clear started in California, all they knew is that they were starting with this dirty brownish looking distillate and they were getting this water white clear distillate. They're like, whoa, it's called the clear. They didn't realize it was mostly all delta 8 because the acidity of the clay isomerized the naturally occurring delta 9 to delta 8. Now there
well, but not 100%, right?
you're
It's
taking
um,
naturally occurring delta 9, which isn't CBD. So in isomerizing delta 9 to delta 8, that's an easy isomerization to do, and it's very, very clean. You don't get the non-natural isomers. But when you take CBD, which now only has two rings, right? And you need to close that third ring to make the THC structure, that's where you see all these non-natural isomers. And so I sent Darwin a chromatogram of here's what it looks like. Here's a commercial sample that shows about 10 different, small peaks, all molecular weight 314 because that's molecular weight of THC. They're all isomers of each other, but they're like the exo THC, the iso this, the iso that, and so yeah, so anyway, it's chemistry rears its ugly head all the time.
Well, yeah, because all lives are matter. You
That's
guys
right.
study
They do.
matter. We're all matter.
Marcus, we haven't had Chris on in a while. Chris Barone. We have kind of like I've lost touch with Chris.
You've lost touch with Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if that he's still doing cannabis. I know he was doing a big hemp project down in South Carolina a number of years ago, but I think he's back in Long Beach area, but I don't think he's associated with the Clear brand anymore. But the Clear brand is still a thing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so those cats were making Delta 8 years before the Farm Bill, and they were making it from Delta 9. So I guess that's the point. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm actually I'm talking to him right now.
oh, okay. Tell
For
him we said hello.
Baroni.
Tell him we all need one of his smoking jackets. Remember that cool smoking jacket he had?
I do remember. Dude's a pretty awesome tripper. He's he'll trip with you. He will trip with you.
Yeah, so there's a lot of lore about Delta 8. Delta 8 itself is probably not it's just like Delta 9. It's no more toxic than Delta 9 is. But the reason why it's got such a bad name is because of all the byproducts that are in there. And what we know is that these coisomers coalute on HPLC, so that inflates the delta 8 numbers. So most of the COAs that are made for delta 8 THC, if it's made by HPLC, are erroneous because those isomers coalute will inflate that peak and make that peak bigger. So yeah, they got to do the analysis by gas chromatography,
Hmm.
and I don't think a lot of testing labs are.
I have to do it by dabbing rig. I do all my
Yes.
testing through my dabbing rig. As you can say, my dabbing rig is in rough shape right now. I don't even know if I should show how much rosin is in the bottom of my pipe right now, but it is pretty disgusting.
You're forgiven.
I'm gonna have to clean that. There's like a couple, like I don't know, maybe like 7 grams of rosin floating in my ship right now.
It's
There's
hash
no
church. So
expect
this is the time
there's
for
no
confession.
expectation your pipe's gonna be clean. That's just we use our stuff, but you should at least change the water. Jesus Christ, that's nasty as
Come
fuck.
as you are, they
Oh no,
say.
the water was clean
And
not too recently, but look at that shit, dude. That is absolutely fucking horrendous. Just balls of fucking rosin in the pipe.
Confession is the path to uh what is it? Resolution. No. What's their term?
Enlightenment.
Absolution, right? Yeah.
Mm.
You can absolve your sins. Confess.
I
That's
shall
such a
make
Catholic
reclaim
notion.
brownies. I shall make reclaim brownies. These things are gonna knock people out.
Oh,
All right.
reclaim brownies. I love it, man. Mix it in with the butter. There you go.
All ready decarboxylated and ready for your ingestion.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, butter is my favorite solvent for cannabinoids.
Really, eh?
Good old-fashioned butter. Yeah,
Butter it up. It
yeah.
sure works. I mean, everyone and their
So
dog
what's your
has a
favorite
brownie
butter,
story.
Jeff? We all picky about, what's your favorite if you could. I know butter's expensive depending on the type, blend, etc. If you could, what's your favorite type of butter to cook cannabis with?
I uh I lived in Vermont for 5 years, and so I remain loyal to the Cabot brand. Um, all right, and yeah, so which yeah, it is not one of the cheaper ones, but it is I don't think anyone's going to argue that it's artisanal. I don't feel that fancy when I buy it.
Artisanal butter.
Yeah.
So are you talking about extracting flour?
I
Yeah,
hope
yeah, yeah.
not.
But in this case, he was talking about making reclaim brownies because
Yes.
Bubbleman pointed out that he has an estimated 7 grams of reclaim in the bottom of his rig,
I'll weigh
and
it.
that's enough to make reclaim brownies.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It'll be
Oh
very
yeah, no.
Yeah, and I just
Reclaim,
suggested, yeah,
it's a
mix that
great.
in with the butter as you're melting it.
exactly.
Love me some
Yeah, what
butter.
I do at Reclaim is put them in the so get yourself a bag of Tootsie Rolls, right? Undo the Tootsies, right? But save the wrappers, right? Put your Reclaim in a baking dish in your microwave. Put all the Tootsies in there. Nuke it, get the Tootsies real nice with the Reclaim, roll it up, make a new Tootsie, cut it and wrap it up, and you're good, right?
That's hilarious.
Oh my
Reclaim
God,
Tootsie.
Mark, you are a wizard, and also I love you a little bit more now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's yeah.
That is the best.
Reclaim. I did a HPLC test. Reclaim is mostly THC. There's a little bit of CBN. It
Yeah.
depends on what your nail temperature is. But we had one of those things that was
Yeah,
actually on the rig
CBN is
as a
not
re
actually efficiently formed, right? Like
as
almost
a
ever.
reclaim catcher. No, it's only like probably like about less than 4 or 5%, Jeff, at least in the sample. In the sample that
It's
I had
only with
a rig.
certain.
I had a
It's only
rig
with
that
certain
had a catcher
oxidants.
on it.
Yeah.
So the catcher was right underneath the nail. So it would basically catch all of your reclaim and it was easy to kind of take out. You could just use like a heat gun or a torch to basically take it out. And so yeah, when I tested it by HPLC and GC, it was about 4 or 5% CBN, but mostly Delta 9, no Delta 8 at all. I didn't see any Delta 8 in the reclaim. So I was like, holy shit, this stuff is rocket fuel, good enough for like you say, a edible or a brownie. And yeah, it's a yeah, great in the Tootsie Rolls and anything. I use bacon fat, Jeff.
I
Bacon
would bet the
fat.
composition depend. I would. Oh yeah. Well, I would bet that the composition depends a whole lot on how clean your chamber is, right? If
Yeah,
it's
well,
got
I
a
think it
bunch of
depends on
chaffing.
what your temperature is and like what any
Yeah, but there's
like
surface chemistry that
resonance time
always
at.
determines these things too.
Yeah, I've seen like the nail that I have on my rig upstairs now, I tend to get a little bit of charring right down the throat of the pipe itself. So I don't know if that means that, there's more oxidation or stuff like that. But I was really surprised on how little CBN there is in there. I thought, oh, there's going to be just a lot of CBN in there,
Yeah.
but no,
No,
not a lot.
it turns out, yeah, every time I've measured and like everything I've done, like, and also the research I see, like for some reason we all have this assumption that you're gonna make like that turning this stuff into CBN is like the drop of a hat, but that's a really small portion of the yield from
It is.
oxidation from adventitious oxidation. Like in order to
It,
make CBN selectively, you need a catalyst or you need a chemical oxidant that's specific and
well,
specific,
actually, Jeff, you could
right?
just
Like
take
you know of other conditions, like
this was really kind of surprising to me, but we were taking
yeah.
just crude hemp extract that was, it wasn't compliant in THC. It had more than 0.3%. I want to say it had upward to like 4 or 5% THC. And what we did with that extract is we just bubbled air through it while heating,
Hmm.
and that completely removed all THC and converted it over to CBN
Hmm.
without really dropping the CBD number. So you could you could just convert THC into CBN in the presence of CBD without losing a lot of CBD. And we would do this,
Bubbling room air.
yeah, we would do this
Yeah.
just bubbling air. Well, it was at temperature, so like 110,
Oh,
120.
okay.
So you're distillate at that
That helps a lot. Yeah.
temperature becomes a lot less viscous that you could actually bubble it through because
Hmm.
distillate at room temperature is like a viscous mess. But at that
Yeah.
temperature, you can get it through. And when you bubble air
Crystallized
through,
honey.
even like I said, 3, 4, 5% THC, overnight bubbling air through, all THC ended up becoming oxidized to CBN. And I got
Yeah.
a jar of it. So then we would actually use that and
Oh, so it's
distill it.
neat.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah, yeah. We would use that
without
crude and
solvent.
distill it
Oh,
and make what was
okay.
called a tea-free distillate. There was no
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
measurable
That makes sense.
THC in the
Yeah.
distillate at all. So-called
Yeah,
a way of remediating
that's
crude.
interesting that that works. I didn't know I didn't know that that worked.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
you could do that.
but
And the other thing
it
I
does
could
make
tell you
sense.
is
So a
that,
temperature in the neat. I mean,
yeah,
reactions change so much when you do them solventless. Holy shit! Like,
yeah.
wow, it's such a word. Yeah, neat reactions are neat.
The other thing I could tell you is
Yeah,
that if you just take
but reactions in a
THC,
salt melt.
whether it's Delta 8 or Delta 9, I think this works better with Delta 9. If you take Delta 9 THC in a solution of like xylene and throw 10% palladium ion carbon at it, it'll rip off the hydrogen and you'll convert THC into CBN and you'll end up blowing the hydrogen through the stack. So if you have another olefin that's there in the pot, you'll do what's called transfer hydrogenation, right? So transfer hydrogenation just transfers the hydrogen from the THC molecule to some hydrogen acceptor. But I've done this reaction now where basically you could just boil it, put a bubbler on there, like a mineral oil bubbler, and you'll see all the hydrogen coming off of the molecule. You're basically ripping hydrogen off of THC, converting it into CBN.
Well, all right then. I'll
Transfer
take your word for it.
hydrogenation. Who knows?
Take your word for it, man. I believe it. It sounds interesting,
Isn't it
nonetheless.
cool? Chemistry is
It
so much
is.
fucking fun. Oh my
Yeah, no,
God.
I love chemistry. I love the whole concept of it. I'll never forget reading Eric K. Drexler's book in 19 fuck, I bet you I read that book before the 90s, like in 89 or 88, maybe when it was brand new. I don't know the year that book came out. It was called Engines of Creation. That's where he coined the term nanotechnology, and he was talking about assemblers and replicators and these microscopic, nanoscopic machines that would assemble and replicate reality and stack atoms, and just the whole concept of it was so insane, to be able to do chemistry on that level with those types of I guess you could call them prosthetics, to take you to a place you could not otherwise go and perceive on the same level. He wrote another book not too long ago called Radical Abundance. And it was kind of a 25 to 30 year later conversation of what's changed and what's happened and how things are growing. It's interesting subjects. I love the just like matter, stacking matter, how all matter is just like we're all just these different, matter being stacked differently. And I ended up being a human, and this ended up being a proxy. Could have gone either way. Maybe this thing could have been a dog in another life. I don't know. I don't pretend to know. I think it's trippy though. It's like no wonder the games like Minecraft are so popular. Where what do? You just build with blocks. You just build worlds. It's like, dude, guy that created that game sold it for like I don't even know what the number was, but it was absurd. It was billions of dollars with
And
the
before
Minecraft.
that, it was, Lincoln Logs. Before that, it was Erector sets. All the,
Sim City.
yeah, SimCity. That was big shit growing up, right? You could actually take
Legos.
control of somebody's life and
Legos.
destroy it accordingly. Oh, Legos, Christ.
Dude, Legos are like $800 for a big box now. It's like you can't even, you're like, I was like, no, this can't
There's
be right. I
stores
think
in the
there's a
airport, though. I mean, it's crazy how much they want for these fucking things, man.
yeah, Lego's the real deal, man. Like that is a good thing. That You don't have to know much about much, but you just have to know that the psychology of that and giving that to kids to play with is,
But isn't that
man,
what Minecraft is, digital Legos to a
yeah,
certain
it
extent?
is 100%. It's just, it's no longer that the same. It's not the simulation we were in. It's the new simulation. We still
And
got to
people
touch the
are,
Lego.
yeah, they're recreating
The
entire
tac
societies, right?
the tactile element is important and different. It is valuable, but it's not the only element. The abstract thinking is also good. And picturing stuff yeah, I think both of them are really neat.
Yeah, conceptualizing and playing with it in your hand, I think was integral I love playing with clay a lot. I like shaping things into, because then I could make these dragons and other things I could see in my head, that kind of digital edging that working in Legos didn't allow you, or these I enjoyed erector sets a lot, but you're limited by the blocks that are there, and so you imagine the other types of blocks or building things, and according to Tinker Toys, remember Tinker Toys, right? Again, creative ways to take space and volume and then mimic or create the things that you don't have or didn't have or wish you had, right? We used to make little
Mm.
radio stations and pretend we were radio broadcasters with the Tinker Toys.
Tune in Tokyo.
I had all that
Not
shit.
that old, Jesus Christ.
You're pretty old,
No,
dude.
I would do WTIX, which is a radio station in New Orleans, and yeah, because we were into radio stations because my mom started a radio station for the blind by the blind, right? So, we were looking at our heroes and stuff like that, fun stuff. But what did you play with as a kid, Mark? You know,
Yeah,
Well,
Lincoln Logs, Spirograph. Remember Spirograph?
yep.
yeah.
And
Like, right?
yeah, I
Like,
remember
right.
Etch a Sketch and trying to make a good thing on Etch a Sketch. It was really difficult, right? The
Did you have
patience
one of those
needed.
chemistry sets as a kid? Did you get one of
I
those?
did. I did.
Okay.
I did. Yeah, and that explains a lot, right? Because the first experiment I did, I was told first of all not to play with it until my dad got home, right? And then
For supervision, right.
yeah, right. I was told, and I took it out, and yeah, there was a picture of the kid on the front cover of the Gilbert chemistry set. I remember it was a metal case that unfolded, and you had a little test tube rack, and there was a little alcohol burner there. And so I took the little spatula, put the goggles on, the apron, the whole deal, added a little bit of all the solids to the test tube. Nothing happened, right? So I added a little bit of the phenolphthalein, that's the acid indicator, turn water into wine. Still nothing happened. So then I'm like, well, they're showing a picture of the kid holding the test tube over the alcohol lamp. So let me light the alcohol lamp on fire. So this is where things got interesting, ATN, right? So back in the day, this is like, this is the late 60s, right? So it's not like
Damn, how old are you, dude?
I
I'm
know
just
how old
joking.
am I? I had to get like a pack of matches from the cabinet up in the or the drawer up in the kitchen. My parents were both tobacco smokers, and I knew where they kept matches. And so remember how when you lit a match in your house, you could smell it throughout the whole house? Yeah. So I went downstairs, lit the match, put the alcohol lamp on fire, and now I'm
All
holding the
sulfur
test
compounds, aren't
tube.
we?
I'm holding the test tube over the alcohol lamp, and it's starting to bubble and boil. I'm like, ooh, chemistry.
Wait, are
Things
you
are
holding it with
happening.
your fingers?
Right? And so then my mom must have smelt me light the can or light the match, right? So she comes down the stairs, and when she did, I turned to see who was coming. And when that happened, I must have tilted the test tube ever so slightly, so it hit a hot spot on the test tube, and all the stuff came out and shot this big blue-green flame to the ceiling, and it singed my eyebrows. So it was the first time I had smelt burnt hair as a kid, and my mom came down and she's like, that's it. You're done. You and chemistry. That's it. That's it. You were supposed to wait till your dad got home, right? And I got the riot. I mean, there were literally this flame shot up. We had an
Yeah.
unfinished basement, so we just had rafters up there, so it didn't singe the ceiling tiles or anything, but it was just kind of like singed my hair. And yeah, now every time I smell burnt hair, ATN, it brings me back to that first chemistry experiment that I did.
George Whitesides had a similar origin story for like why he was a chemist. And it
Yeah.
was because when he was a kid, he lit a bunch of tires on fire in the garage to see what would happen, to see how they burned. And he found out.
Yeah, endlessly.
Yeah, I did the
That's how
same
they
thing.
burned.
I did the same
Yeah.
thing with.
And for me, it was I had a chemistry set, I had Legos, and when I was a kid, like 11 or 12 even, I'm shocked that my parents let me do this. I would save up my allowance for like 2 or 3 months before the 4th of July, because these guys would show up and they'd set up these tents in like in parking lots someplace, and they'd sell fireworks that are otherwise, like, for some reason they would sell all the illegal fireworks in Florida if you just went to like the right tent, like. And I would buy all these fireworks, and I would spread out newspapers on the floor of my bedroom, and I'd cut them open and I'd remix all the different ingredients and see what the results were like. And I would build like custom little tanks and stuff out of them and everything, like, oh.
You guys are maniacs. I was playing hockey. You guys want to know what
That's how
toys
you
I was
get really
playing with?
great
I was
scientists.
playing
Crazy people.
hockey. I did that like 6 days a week. I'm from Manitoba. That's all we did was play hockey for 8 months of the year. And then for 4 months of the year, we played soccer.
Well, remember, I burned down my house with my first confession candle and lied about it. So, you know.
Dude, my dad was a fireman. So, like, playing with fire, having a candle, having a lighter, talking about fire, thinking about fire, all resulted in the same thing,
Don't
an
even think
ass
about
whooping.
fire, Marcus.
No,
Marcus,
that
don't
was
even
a
think about fire.
full fire ass whooping. For my dad had like pulled burnt children out of fires and he'd seen some shit. So he had a zero tolerance fuck around for if you just wanted my very nice father to turn into a psychopath, all you had to do was just start playing with fire. It was
See that.
not good.
And you had hockey.
And I had hockey, and it's hard to play with fire when you're playing hockey. Like, I will be honest.
Yeah. You'd say it's
When
really
did you, when
fucking
Marcus,
hard.
when did you get fascinated with chemistry then? So after you started
Well, I was
doing
always
that?
fascinated with mathematics and chemistry. I was reading like Michio Kaku and other different like books back in like the late 80s. Like when I was a teenager, I got into it. I was very naturally good at like mathematics and chemistry and the sciences in high school. I just like didn't have to do any work, didn't have to try it all. I could get a B plus, no problem. If I like even did like 5 minutes of studying, I'd get an A. And I just never really, you know, had the interest in the university aspect of studying it. But from a cannabis perspective, it happened pretty quick. Dave was definitely a big inspiration of that because I would have met Dave in my 20s. But even before that, I met one of my good friends, Martin, one of my sort of mentors, the founder of Manitoba Harvest and Fresh Hemp Foods, was he had his some degree, I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was even just a Bachelor of Science or something as simple as that. But he was very intelligent. And so it was pretty early on. I was still a teenager, you know, smoking joints and getting high with Martin. He was probably already 28, 29 years old, maybe a good 10 years older than me, and very intelligent. And so pointing me towards books and pointing to me towards conversations and dialogues that we had together, and then eating like 5 dried grams of mushrooms that we ordered from Terrence McKenna and like tripped balls together at his house many, many times. A lot of cool dialogues came from those things. And I would say that that was where my interest of just the understanding of having an understanding of why when Terrence said, how come the deeper you go, the bigger it gets? And well, you know, chemistry is a great place to go for that answer.
everything is so complicated. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you get really deep into stuff, you find out it's way more complicated than you thought.
That's
Whatever.
it. That's it. And especially to get into things like, the psychedelic aspect of things and the intense like discomfort that came from some of those experiences that my friends and I had together. We weren't like, it wasn't a party drug for us. It was, once again, I took Terrence's, one of my favorite Terrence McKenna quotes about mushrooms is, what does he say? He says, these substances do not bathe the ego in a cloud of certitude. And I always thought that was an incredible quote. I was like, ain't that the fucking truth, Terrence? Holy shit. It's another great way of saying these are non-addictive substances.
It gets really profound when you're in it and you're staring at your hand, right?
It's just the polar opposite of, you know what I mean? Addiction. Like, why do people get addicted to drugs? Because they bathe the ego in a cloud of certitude. Well, these psychedelic compounds, they do not. They do not do that. So if that's what you're looking for, these are probably not the right substances for you. However, if you would like to tear away all the fake and phoniness that you've built into your life experience and being and have it stripped away in an instant and experience, I don't want to say life, but experience
Liberation.
outside of the 5 cents prison. Yes, liberation would be a good term for that. Then they're for you. And so, yeah, I had a lot of good times with them myself. We ate a lot of mushrooms and definitely, I think my urge for a lot of things, once again, academia, the idea of going into school after school wasn't like a big, school wasn't hard for me. I never really had difficulty at school. Plus, I sold everyone weed. It was like the most amazing place to meet all the groups. I'd sell these Metler dudes weed, and then I'd sell these Sporto dudes weed, and then I'd sell these like, whatever the group was that, so many of the groups didn't interact and connect, but the weed connected all of them. And what I found was the same thing, that there's unique individuals in each of those groups, and some are highly intelligent and some are a few pliers short of a toolbox, just like the whole world, the macrocosmos. Yeah.
There's
I
some good
wonder.
people everywhere.
Yeah, there's amazing people everywhere, man. I feel like the internet is where it feels the most divided, but when I go out in the world, the odd time I'll see like these interactions where someone's like, hey, you can't be on that skateboard on the road. And they'll just be like, have a weird little interaction where someone wants to police you. But otherwise, I do feel that's very accurate, Jeff, that most people are damn fine people. And that's why the thing that I'm the most happy about in the legalization of cannabis here in Canada is that you can give it away. You can give away hashish to anyone that's over the age of 19 or whatever it is in your province. I think there's some that are 18, maybe some that are 21. But you can give it away. Like my green waste guys that come every week, I put like 50 to 70 bags out. I go down there, I help them. My wife was like, oh, you should get them some beer. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll buy them beer. I don't even drink beer or like beer or fucking want to buy them beer, but I did it. And then I thought, hey, I could give you guys hash. They were like, I talked to them last Friday when they were in front of my house. I was like, would you guys like some hash like next time instead of some beer? And the guy was like, that'd be great. And I just thought, how wonderful is that? Not only am I allowed to offer him hash, but he's allowed to say that would be great and even take the hash. And there's no problems. Now, maybe I won't be giving it to him while he's at work. Maybe that would be a problem, but I'll make sure to get him this hash when it's 100% legal and no problems for anyone. And I think that's one of my favorite things about cannabis, legalization here in Canada. I can give up to an ounce of hash away to anyone every day, like multiple times. I think I could give as long as I'm allowed medically to have 150 grams. Recreationally, we're allowed to have 28 grams out in public. So you could go to the store and buy 28 grams and bring it home. And then I believe you could go to the store and buy more and bring it home. Maybe your home amount is different, but we're only allowed to buy
that sort of starvation.
Well, I mean, I have kilos saved up here, man. I'm not fucking around. I'm not fucking around. I pulled these rocks out recently, just these big rocks of hash that I had like a 10-pound bag of trim that a friend left here. And I moved that bag maybe 5 or 6 times. But I guess what happened was all of the heads in the bag like settled and congealed into these rocks. These rocks are from a bag of trim that basically made itself. This hash made itself.
Jake rocks.
I call it a hashtag never touched hash. You just put the trim, you get really good trim from fucking Kevin from Royal Harvest. And yeah, I couldn't believe it, man. I was actually like, what the actual fuck is going on?
Ooh.
That's insane. It's like also like 400 or 500 grams of hash rocks. Like they're not small. Do you know what I mean? Like they're big hash rocks. They're nasty. I mean, they're probably only like 40% or 35% THC.
Shake.
I would have preferred. Yeah, it was just from shake, but you know, it would have been perfect material had it not congealed into those rocks. If I could have kept it cool and you know, moisture low, I would have been able to statically, you know, use my plasmatic separator here that's on my table. I got my little R&D SC filtration unit here, which is a blast, you know, running it through the two plates and having the positive and the negatives pull the heads and the contaminant and brushing off the heads. It is the most surreal thing to be able to take dry sift. We took some the other day. It was 23% was the dry sift. And we ran it through this machine and it came out 44% after like literally like a 2-minute pass in this machine, which I was very impressed with. It more than doubled the purity or the potency of the product. I don't know how much the purity went up. I didn't check it with a microscope, but you just run it a few more times and you can really isolate the heads. You can run it through a jet sieve or do Skunkman Sam's static sifting trick over the 200 LPI screen and just purify to 99%, which is a pretty cool thing that people have the ability to buy a machine that does that now. I don't know if you guys have ever played with it, but listen, like solventless is incredible. We love solventless and water hash. I'm a huge fan of. I never won't be. But the idea of the least footprint that you can leave, because obviously, like the water is pulling things out. We spoke about that earlier. These phenolic compounds that Dr. Mark was showing. It's pulling something out. Dry sifting is not doing that. You're not pulling that stuff out because the water isn't being used. So it is another level of that sort of truest expression without, you know, I know all extraction processes to a degree leave a footprint of some form of another, and water hash certainly does. And I'm certain that rosin will as well with the heat and the pressure that's involved. But purified dry sift, I would suspect leaves the least footprint. I would suspect if you were a detective following footprints, you would not want to follow the static sifted gland head purity footprint. You would want to follow some fucking solvent or some water extraction process. That would leave you a nicer, deeper set of footprints to follow. It's my opinion anyway. It's my opinion, damn it. And I'm allowed to share it.
Goddamn right. It's great seeing you guys.
Yeah, you too, Jeff.
Dip and smoke a joint, man.
Well, thanks for coming in, brother. We appreciate you. I think we'll probably call it a day here soon. We have another 20 minutes. I guess we might as well go till 1 p.m. I know, Dr. Mark and Etienne, have something to say. Yeah, we know you do. How about what is the good conversation that, oh yeah, right. What do you guys think is going on with, I heard people talking about this Schedule 3 thing. Is this just another baloney poo-poo conversation, or is there some form of giddiness? Is there, how do you guys feel living in America? Brick wall?
I tried to actually get in. My group, Veterans Action Council, me and Michael Kralitz tried to get in to the hearings. We inadvertently through our conversations behind the scenes, spawned why there is rescheduling. In the first place, through the work that Mike's done internationally by changing international law. It basically stems from we made the U.S. Attorney General's office aware that since medical cannabis is legal worldwide now, that it should be legal in all 50 states and territories. It is not. And so back in the previous administration, dealing with Merrick Garland's office, we spoke to then the head of the Office of National Drug Control Policy and made them aware that you're out of compliance with the international law because you used to beat us over the head. And why does that matter, people? Well, my friends John Getman and Normal and various others worked on rescheduling for decades and were unsuccessful because in the end, the DEA throws up its hands and says, the treaty, sorry, the treaty is the problem. We can't change because of this treaty, right? So Michael and them realize, okay, then let's go at the treaty. And so what did they do? They changed the fucking treaty. And you know what the United States did? The United States went, oh, no, that's not a significant change in the treaty. It's not significant enough to warrant any measure or change. Well, there's a little loophole in the United States that the U.S. Attorney General can reclassify any drugs at any time. He has that law because any of those analogs, and if you look every year at the UN, they make these analogs, usually meth, etc. Analogs, they make them illegal. They put them into Schedule 4, which is Schedule 1 in the United States, which is the worst in evil and bad. Well, once they got it pulled from Schedule 4 at the world level and the United States was made aware, as stated, they decided to ignore it outright. So we reminded them they needed to change. And then shortly after, they decided to have rescheduling. So rescheduling was going down its merry way. They selected a administrative law judge who, when we vetted and looked at that person, he seemed to be very fair. He had actually been fucked with by the DEA for calling out the DEA in the past for their many years of indiscriminate, bad shit that they did. And eventually, unfortunately, due to the delays and tactics done by our side, it caused change in administration. And that change in administration, of course, as we've seen, dragged its feet and now has appointed a draconian drug enforcement agency person who would have loved to have been DEA, head of back in the 80s because he speaks the same unfortunate regimented verbiage, and unfortunately puts us in the position of questioning fairness, right? Because the reason that it got delayed is because one of our lawyers on our side felt that Kevin Sabet and the DEA were having side conversations on how to game the system, and the judge wanted to look into it, and the judge was like, oh shit, there may be something here. I'm going to delay until this gets figured out. And it got delayed, and now that judge has retired because he hit the age of retirement, and he's like, I'm out. And unfortunately, just the other week, the DEA decided to not fund the administrative law judge position, which you need an administrative law judge to actually oversee the proceedings. So I think there's a bit of talking out of their ass once again, where they're saying something that they're going to do something, but will we see real action? I don't know. Now, Schedule 3, that whole discussion, we don't like Schedule 3. People are all worried that everything in the medical states is going to change, and that's not going to change. You have to understand is that even in Schedule 1, pharmaceutical companies have had access to medical cannabis. The individual 10th Amendment state realities are not going away. So there's a fear that if at Schedule 3 happens, then it's again, if you look at how things go in the amount of scheduling, it would only be allowed through a pharmacy, right? Well, we only know there's one state, I think for sure, that's doing it out of a pharmacy system, and that's Louisiana, and that's a dysfunctional system. outright compared to the other 40 plus states here in the United States. Again, let me remind you and everybody that none of these 10th Amendment realities are the same. No state has the exact same laws and realities, so it makes it a huge problem where compared to Canada, you have one universal law, right, that protects the people, right? Which in the
Well, no, we
earlier,
have one universal law for rec and we have one
right,
universal law for medical, but they're
okay,
not the same laws.
okay. Let me clarify. I was wrong there, so I said corrected. So here in the United States, we need to go through the procedure of rescheduling, which of course now they've appointed this new DEA person. They say that they're ready to move forward with rescheduling, but that really isn't a discussion that's happening because we've seen again through the previous model or the current model in play, they have created Nabalone and all the other Epidiolex and every other pharmaceutical that again nobody wants. Everybody still goes to their local 10th Amendment realities to purchase their cannabis, either from the legal source or a source that is non-taxed on the side, right? Traditional market sort of stuff, as we call it, right? So you've got a large contingency here in the United States, Marcus, that has grown into cannabis. And you're seeing a lot of studies about these cannabis drinks because due to a loophole that happened in 2018 to the Farm Bill, there's been allowed to have these cannabis products come out and be on the market to the point where um, pretty much I bet you Mark Sheldon and I can go to probably the same chain of liquor stores in his state and my state, and there will be the same THC CBD product on the market as a drink, right? And that drink is cheaper than my dispensary, which would carry that same drink and was actually regulated to do so. So we've got a large contingent of an explosion of these products, good or bad, okay? Because we know there's a lot of nefarious, products out there that have spawned a huge market to where that market is paying kickbacks, right? And those kickbacks are being to politicians at the state level. We saw it happen in Texas where there was a revolt where the governor decided to not. So now there's a movement within the legislature to step on the governor, right? So you've got the will of the people and you've got the will of the politicians again battling. And Republicans say they're states' rights, but in actuality, it's not starting to look that way in many results. And whether it moves to rescheduling, again, temper yourselves, people. Even once rescheduling goes through the hearings, it's going to take years to get implemented. It's a 3 to 4 year process. It's not a quick thing. And even once it moves to Schedule 3, which my group, Veterans Action Council, believes that it should be descheduled, it shouldn't be on scheduling. But people believe that, and there's discussions around Schedule 5, and that's why my group tried to get in to testify, Marcus, is because we wanted to actually speak towards Schedule 5 or descheduling. Because worst case scenario, I've been doing Schedule 5 which is over the counter, and I've been doing over the counter for 26 years now, right? So I have an established understanding of efficacy and safety of and around this product, right? So it's really just I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think it's more talk than action is going to happen, unfortunately, and we're going to have to wait out till another administration, which to again will kickstart this product. I mean this process of actually taking place, which is going through a hearing. Once that hearing is done, a decision is made. Once that decision is made, then whichever way they're going to get sued, right? If they say cannabis should be legal and cannabis and I mean, or should be moved to Schedule 3, then Kevin Sabet and his group are going to sue saying, no, it should be Schedule 1. It's evil bad. And they're going to have to go through that series of lawsuits to go all the way through the court system, which again, that can take 1 year to 5 years, depending on, what things are. It would probably be fast tracked and there would probably be a fast track tacked onto it, but it would still take its time to be in place before It would have to be tested in the courts, and then it would be moved into. Whereas currently, the USAG, currently Pam Bondi, who I have written, and my group, pardon me, our group, the Veterans Action Council, have written her and made her aware of the same thing we made Merrick Garland of. So you asked a very complicated question, Bubble Man, that had no simple answer, but I hope I kind of laid it out easy enough for you and everybody to understand. I know it's crazy, but if it's going to happen, it's going to get rescheduled to 3. It's not the boogeyman that everybody says it is. It affects, companies like myself because it moves it out of Schedule 1 and 2. And the Schedule 1 and 2 is where we get hit with this thing called 280E, which is a tax code where we're actually taxed 70% of everything that we do sales wise in the United States. So many layers to this onion. And there's, we're working on that, as well as, we've got groups working on banking as well. But because we don't have that legal federal protection, we have to be like an octopus fighting these and punching with all these different arms in these different areas. And we have to punch clear, concisely, and perfectly every time. Because if we miss, your arm goes limp for about another 4 to 6 years before it gets enough strength to take that punch again. If that makes any sense.
Ouch. Yeah, no, it does for sure. Well, hopefully it's good. Hopefully something moves down the road. It would be huge for cannabis in the world for America to federally legalize it. It would be a massive, massive blow to prohibition worldwide. And we're waiting for it. I mean, fuck, both sides, your bookends, Mexico and Canada, we're pumping it out.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say is that I think, I, you know, ah, it's not dangerous, so it doesn't need to be controlled. So it shouldn't be on the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act. And I think that boof mids grown by some big pharma acquired MSO needing a doctor's prescription sold at a drugstore is going to fail, with the trap market winning all day long. So you were talking about New York before. It was interesting. Colin wasn't on today. I know Colin participates in New York. With New York, I mean, the the trap market there is so endemic. I mean, it's like if you go to Manhattan these days, 10 years ago, it would smell like urine and chestnuts and pretzels. Now it smells like weed because there's 5 stores on every block in Manhattan selling weed. And it's like, it's not like a weed store. It's just like a convenience store that just, oh yeah, by the way, they sell weed, and it all comes from California. So yeah, I don't know. I think, rescheduling is wrong, my own personal opinion. Hey, if it increases access to patients, that's great. Takes away 280E, that's great. But ultimately, the trap market's going to end up winning until they completely, deschedule it. It should be deschedule or bust. They
And
should
grow
Yeah,
keep
that's
your
what
own,
bust.
everyone in the chat's saying for sure.
and grow your own, right?
But when
Because
you
that
say
Yeah.
bust, what you're saying is it should be deschedule or leave it as Schedule 1. That's really what that statement says. And I don't know if that's
Well,
good.
now I like when they used to paint California or bus, that was like, they used to paint it on their covered wagons going west. Like we're either gonna make it to California or we ain't gonna make it at all. So it's kind of like, yeah, in that respect, I understand what you're saying, Mark. Leave it on Schedule 1. But like right now, like we got to remember that at least in Washington, D.C., I'm sure it's different in Ottawa, but in Washington, D.C., um, 4 out of 5 paid lobbyists are paid by the pharmaceutical, alcohol, big food, and consumer products industries that just want to keep cannabis illegal because they're making a lot of money keeping it illegal. The other industry that plays into this is the drug testing industry is a big industry. It's like $1 billion industry. All those people who have to piss in the cup every Monday, that's so the industries that are making money maintaining prohibition, they don't want things to change at all. For big beverage, I don't know what you think, ATN, but I think like for big beverage, this is such an easy play for them because they already have the distribution networks, they already have the retail. For them to add cannabis beverages as another set of SKUs, not a big issue for them. To them, it's like almost like another flavor. So it makes sense in reducing cannabis to, oh, it's just an ingredient that's going to go into these flavored beverages. And now people can go and, yeah, you could still buy beer and you could still buy wine, but now you can buy a THC beverage. My heart of hearts, I think that that's a good thing, right? I'd rather have people on THC than on alcohol. But at the end of the day, it feeds to the business model. Oh, it's kind of like, we've used this model before, just like with alcohol, like you could be in a Walmart and you could get mass produced Budweiser swill that just tastes like crap. But you could also at that Walmart get a locally brewed microbrew that's got, good flavor to it. It's in keeping money in your local economy in that it's employing a local brewery. You might even know the people.
Unless Budweiser owns it, but that's neither here
Yeah,
nor
right. Right.
and by the way,
Or
your
like
billion-dollar assumption of the drug testing market in the US, it is estimated to be worth 8.64 billion as
billion
of
dollars.
this
Yeah.
year, 8.64
But
billion, with a
Marcus, your
4.8% growth
your
in the
your
next 5
story
years.
about how you tip those guys with hash as opposed to tipping them with beer, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, just the notion that, yeah, like again, at the artisan level, if I make an artisan product, it's not a alternative currency, but could I use it to barter and just like the person who, I don't know, has got the dairy farm, who's got all kinds of dairy products. Could that person barter with the guy who's got a cannabis farm on the other side of the hill? I mean, I guess what you'd like to think, at least, is that cannabis descheduling provides the freedom that we've needed to have around the plant. Now, let free market economies do what they do. Again, like you can grow your own tomatoes, or you can go to the store and you can buy tomatoes, or you can go to the Amish farm that's right down the road from you that's got a little roadside farm stand and buy your tomatoes there. So now, once it's completely descheduled, people will have the opportunity to say, I can grow my own, or I can go to my guy who's been growing it for years and he grows really good weed. Or, you know what? I'm going to go to the dispensary and I'm going to get some dispensary stuff. So I think you should have the freedom to do all the above, right?
I like
I mean,
it. I like Dr. Allen's I smell freedom.
that's
That's the kind of freedom I can get behind. I appreciate you guys hanging out till the end. I think I'm gonna cut it short here. Thank you everyone for watching, the whole crew, Bingo for holding down the chat. Thanks Press Club for doing the giveaway and sponsoring Hash Church. Thank you to Puffco and Bubble Bags for also sponsoring Hash Church and supporting us. And yeah, for those of you that maybe might not know, I meant to mention this. Wade's GoFundMe. The number on the GoFundMe was set to $50,000. It's been about 40,000 that's been donated so far. They don't get that money until they hit their number. So she hasn't received a penny of that money. There's about $10,000 left. And so it is the one that's called Help Wade Get Essential Home Care. And I'm going to put it up in the chat here real quick so that if you have the ability, anything is going to be helpful. pass it around, share it on your social media. If you can't afford a few bucks, that's okay. Just share it out, even if you can pull in a few bucks for Monica. And that's going to be super helpful for her to deal with all the things she's dealing with right now, which I'm sure it's an endless amount of bullshit, as it often is when people pass away. And I just hate the idea of Wade's, loved ones and family, Monica, being in any way, additional grief and suffering from him being gone because of a monetary thing. If we can get this over, if we can get this 10 grand over and up to that 50,000 number, the money will be released to her and she'll be able to pay off all these super important things and have an enormous amount of less stress in her life. So I put that up in the chat, and I am going to put it into the description of this video with a little mention, and anything that you guys can do would be super helpful. I know that Puffco kicked down large in that 30 to 40 grand. I know that a lot of people from the community have kicked down. So, definitely thank you for that from Wade and Monica and all the people who love them. And I guess we will gather again next week here at Hash Church. May the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. And if it does, I hope your bowl's a Puffco. I know mine is. The Bowlman. You see that? Yeah, Bowlman. Thanks, Hemperco. Got the Bowlman on my Puffco. Thanks, Etienne. Thanks, Dr. Mark. We'll talk to you guys soon. Blessings.
Yeah.